And we're live. What's up, man?
What's up?
How you
Thanks
doing,
for
brother?
having me, man.
Of course, man. My pleasure. Thanks for being here.
This is cool.
How long have you been doing jiu-jitsu for? What's it been, like a month now?
Yeah, feels like that's my experience level. I actually tested it out in 2019, and back then I was much bigger, and it was just such a strange thing for me. You know, you come up with excuses why you shouldn't do something. And so the whole time I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I'm flexible enough to do this. This seems like something I'll get injured in. But I tested it out, and then all of my bodybuilding coaches, they were like, Matthias, this is not good for your recovery. And
Yeah.
so I did it for maybe 3 months. Then I was preparing to go to a echelon front event in Chicago. They do a thing called the muster, and I knew they did jujitsu in the evening, like Jocko and all them. And so I was like, I need to know kind of some of the basics, and that's all I got was the bare minimum basics. So completely unprepared. After that, I just kind of went back to my normal routine, and it was always something that was interesting, but I never committed to it because every coach that I ever had for bodybuilding was like, it's just not something you want to get into just because it's not uh, something that's going to help you with your bodybuilding.
Certainly not conducive to putting on size,
Yeah.
right? Those long sessions of cardio,
Yeah.
there's an inverse relationship between building muscle and cardio. That's why runners are so skinny.
Yeah. And I mean, last year, so October, I was like, I really was getting to the point. I travel with work some, and I felt like, well, I'm not in the zone with bodybuilding as much as I used to be, just with my professional time. So I thought it would be a great time for me to approach that and be able to commit to it, step away from bodybuilding a little bit until I can wrap my mind around a prep and actually doing what I'm supposed to do,
Yeah.
and just take some time to enjoy myself training and do what I want to do. And that's what I've wanted to do. So since October of 22 until now, I don't even know what that is. What?
Yeah, like 6 months.
Yeah. So it's been cool. And I competed in my first competition in, what was that?
You did a Naga, right?
Yeah,
I
Naga.
thought I saw something on you. Oh, yeah, there it is on your Instagram. I'll pull that up. People can see.
Yeah. So that was cool. Did the gi.
Yeah, you look so angry.
It's just my face.
I like it.
That's my default face.
That's a good one. Yeah, you're just flexing on the podium.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a good one.
It was a good time though.
Yeah.
And just to get that experience and be able to see what a competition is like. And I liked it. So
That's cool. That's cool. I did my first tournament after about 3 months of training also, because I'm like, it's jujitsu. Like,
Yeah.
well, what's the worst that can happen? Just tap out if something goes wrong.
absolutely.
So I just jumped in there. I see people take, they're spending their whole lives trying to get ready for a jiu-jitsu tournament. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, you're just making excuses. Just get in there. And I got my ass kicked. I got beaten by points by one guy. He just kept taking me down. He was a wrestler, and my wrestling to this day still sucks. So he just kept taking me down and pointed me to death. And then the other guy suplexed me. I remember his name, Leon Daniels. He was a jack dude. He owned a gym. I think he used to be a bodybuilder in El Paso, and he suplexed me, and he tapped me out with some kind of neck crank.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what it was at the time. He got me in a neck crank, and yeah, I was 3 months in, but I was like, it's fine. I want to go compete. Like,
Yeah.
what's the worst that could happen?
That's exactly right. Everybody that I've talked to, even the people that they've been there twice as long as I have, they're like, oh yeah, like I'm interested, but I'll do one when I'm ready. And that time's never going to come.
They're never ready. No, you're never going to be fully prepared. And you always notice the people who suffer from a lack of confidence when they're trying to learn new moves a couple days before a contest.
Oh, yeah.
That's when the learning should stop. Learning should stop 2 weeks before a contest. Just now you're just polishing the skills that you already have.
Yeah.
It's like trying to take a max effort, trying to hit a PR 2 days before a powerlifting meet. That's just stupid. Why would you do that?
Yeah. I think what was cool about it too, I mean, compared to a lot of sports, because like powerlifting, bodybuilding, you get thrown in with everyone else who they've been doing it for a while. Essentially, like if you threw a white belt in with black belts, and it wasn't like that for this competition. So that's something that kind of took the edge off for me, because you're standing across from this person, and yeah, you don't know what they're good at, but at the same time, they're a white belt too.
Yeah.
You know, they're probably feeling the exact same things you're feeling. And I had a moment like that with the very first guy where the referee's like, go. And we were both like, I like looked at the ref and he's like, go ahead. And I was like, oh, okay, go now. And both of us like just took a moment to be like, now should we go? He's like, yeah, go.
That's funny.
So
yeah, I mean that's competition, and there is that strange thing. You're like, okay, now do I go over there and try to beat this guy up? Because it is a weird thing. It's not like, I don't know. It's not like go and then you're trying to lift a stone like a strongman competition. You're like, I'm gonna go over there now and I'm gonna grab this guy and I'm gonna try to beat him up.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a different thing. And then there's guys that you see in fights sometimes that take advantage of the glove touching, where the guy comes out to touch the glove and they just come over the top and crack him.
Yeah.
So you can't ever assume that your opponent's gonna be down to touch gloves. You like once the ref says fight, you got to just be ready to fight.
It's interesting too, because in jiu-jitsu, I guess everybody starts to develop like their approach at it. And I watched a video this morning actually where as soon as they touched hands, the guy he did what would seem like a Russian tie where he went under the guy's arm, but then he quickly just got to his back and started choking him out. This is like maybe 3 seconds in.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking to myself, like, well, that's his plan.
Sure.
He's like a fast mover, but then I was standing to the side, you watch some people and they're doing this whole touching their head and touching their hands. And they do that for like 2 minutes. And I was like, man, it's strange because, it's like any other sport. You got people who are like strong in the first half and finish strong. It's different.
I get super annoyed by those guys that just want to do, just want to like play pause the whole time. I'm like, man, let's lock up already. What do you keep just getting away from me every time we try to grab, you just getting away. I'm like, this is grappling, dude. Like we need to actually lock up at some point. What are you trying to accomplish here? Those guys can get annoying, and that gets even more annoying in the gi, I feel.
Yeah.
And I mean, the advantage is that you can, if you actually get a hold of somebody's gi, you can really keep them there if you got a good grip. But when they start playing the whole just like ripping the sleeve out, when they start doing that stuff, that gets pretty annoying.
That was so I had only 2 people in my division, and I had signed up for the absolute too. I don't know that I'll do that next time because I was just so gassed. And
really?
Yeah, I did.
Too many matches?
It was just a lot faster in terms of like your next one than I thought it would be.
Okay.
Like I'm just used to like, most sports, it's like, okay, you're done with your thing for a little bit, rest. But I had maybe 2 minutes between one and like 4 minutes between the next one. And then the final one. So I won my first one by submission, won the second one by submission. Nice. And then they're like, we're waiting on you for my first absolute match. And I go over there and the guy's like, he's in the ultra heavy. So I was a super heavyweight. He was ultra. So he was 300 and some pounds. It seemed like he was definitely over 300 pounds. And we were actually both pretty gassed because we had both just finished one. And we look at each other. We're like pouring sweat. We haven't even started yet. And we locked up. And I had watched him go, and he was just throwing people down by their gi. And so he tried to do that to me, but I held on to his gi. And it was like such a rookie move for both of us. We held on to each other's gi for the entire time.
Just wasted your grip.
Wasted everything.
Yeah.
Until the very end, he threw me one more time and got me down and beat me by one submission.
Oh,
that's it. That's how he won.
Oh, he tapped you out?
2 points. No.
Oh, points.
2
Beat
points.
you by points.
Yeah.
I hate losing to points. I hate losing to points.
One takedown.
Yeah, one takedown. And that's the worst way to lose in a jiu-jitsu tournament is to a takedown. Because I'm like, this isn't a wrestling tournament. This is a jiu-jitsu tournament. So there should not be any points awarded for takedowns.
You think it should just be unlimited time until somebody submits somebody?
I like that idea, except you will have 2-hour matches.
Was that the old school? Was the old school UFC that way?
I don't know.
It was like you had to finish.
I'm not sure about that.
I don't know either.
I don't know if they had no time limit. I know Pride back in the day used to have a 10-minute round and then a 5-minute round.
Could you imagine?
A 10-minute round is a lot.
10 minutes.
A lot with soccer kicks. I mean, there was everything, head stomps, everything goes in Pride. Knee. I think you could also in Pride, I think you could knee to the head of a downed opponent. You can't do that in the
That's
UFC, which I think you should be able to. I think if I'm in side control, and I earned that position, it's on the person who's on the bottom
protect
to
yourself.
try and get out. So why are you taking away my ability to knee somebody? Like when you're in side control, you're set up perfectly to knee people in the head.
Have you seen the jiu-jitsu now where they're slapping each other?
Yeah, with the slap. I haven't really looked into it.
Combat jiu-jitsu.
I've seen clips on Instagram. They just pop up on my feed because I check out a lot of JIT stuff, so they pop up. But I haven't actually looked into the rule set. How does that work?
I haven't looked into the rules, but from what you see, it looks like they have to do everything open hand.
Yeah,
but they use their palm,
like pancrase.
Like hitting people while they're down, and so that changes everything.
Well, back in the day, pancrase, which is what Boss Rutan was a absolute badass in, was open palm strikes on the ground. And Boss lives in New Braunfels now. I've been trying to get a hold of him for like 3 months, try to get him on the podcast. But yeah, he was really good at striking with this part of the hand.
Yeah.
Like when you watch guys who break stuff with open palm strikes, like where they set up and they break, I don't know, bricks or cement slabs or something like that. There's a part of the hand that has a lot of that you want to hit with, like the hardest part of the hand. I think it's probably like right here, I guess. It's the same part of the hand where you would place the barbell in a bench press.
That's what I was thinking, right? Closest to your wrist.
Yeah. Yep. That's where you put the bar to bench, and that's what you strike with. And so you can actually really fuck somebody up with that. It's not just a slap, it's actually a strike.
I feel like I've seen more females doing it. Like the videos that I've seen.
It's probably because they can't punch.
Now we go.
kidding, ladies.
Yeah. It's intense though.
It's good stuff, man. I like it. I think the UFC would probably benefit at least in some ways from having no glove fighting, because then you would see more open palm strikes on the ground, because you can't just tee off on somebody's skull if your hands are not wrapped. You're going to break your hands.
I watched some of that just a little bit ago, some of the bare knuckle boxing, but it was something overseas, UK or something like that. And it's a guy I follow on Instagram now. I try to look him up. I feel like his last name's like Bostic or something like that. It's intense. Seeing those fights, it's completely different from anything else that you watch, because like you said, it's hurting you to hurt them, you know. His name is Jake Brutal Bostwick.
Let's see. I'm gonna find him.
The videos of
Jake Brutal. His middle name is Brutal.
I guess that's maybe his nickname.
It's a good name.
But the videos that they post of the fights, I'm like, wow. And they do look like they have some wrap on their hands, but still, that's nothing. It looks like tape. I don't know.
Oh, I've seen this guy.
Yeah,
wasn't this guy? He was dating Steffi Cohen.
Oh, I don't know.
I think this is her ex-boyfriend.
Oh, wow. Is that how she got into fighting?
No, she's just, you know who Steffi Cohen is, right? She's just a badass, man. That woman is so impressive.
Yeah. She's doing everything now. She's got a ton of world records powerlifting.
Oh my God, like 25 of them. Yeah, I didn't know who this guy was. I had just seen him on her posts. I don't know. I've been following her for a while. She's and she's still setting world records in the deadlift, even though she's boxing now. She's been boxing for a while. I think she's had four boxing matches, something like that. She's just so impressive. She's so young. I think she's my age. I think she's 30. And I mean, 25, probably about 25 all-time powerlifting records, pro boxer now, published author, physical therapist. Like, there's just some people that are just so highly accomplished. They make me feel like I'm useless.
No, that's how it is. It's like, that's what we were talking about the other day. It's like, you know, you want to push yourself in every single aspect that you can. You know, everybody is going to have different outcomes for different things, but it's like, you know, how you do one thing's how you do everything, right? That's the way I think about it. You know?
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, it's like, try to be the very best you can at it. You know,
wasn't that quote in John Wick? Just right now in John Wick 4. I just watched John Wick 4.
John Wick.
None of them?
None.
No, I just watched the fourth one. Dude, he just kills everybody.
I was around somebody the other day and they were like, the new John Wick. They were like talking about it. I was like, I haven't seen any of them. They looked at me like,
they're good.
You shouldn't be here. Like,
yeah, those people are silly.
They're like, it's good.
Those people are silly. I've never seen The Godfather. People give me the same.
Oh, that's too long for anybody to watch.
Yeah, right.
Like 6 movies or something.
That's a long way. Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I love Game of Thrones. But no, John Wick is cool. The fourth one, the problem when you have a movie that comes out straight out of the gate so badass is trying to top it in the sequel it's just becomes so difficult. Like that's what happened with Fast and the Furious.
Yeah,
The early movies were really cool. You know what I mean? And then they just got to a point where they're basically turning these guys into superheroes because they just don't know how to top racing. And like, how many ways can you race a car?
Did they not have a car go to space or something? In one
they
of the
had, did they?
It's unbelievable.
Or is that in the new one?
I don't.
I know they did skydiving in their cars in one of the movies where they drove the car out of an airplane and the car was hooked up to a parachute.
Why?
And then they flew from those towers in Dubai. Vin Diesel was driving, or in Abu Dhabi, and he drove the car through the glass panes of one tower, flew through the air, landed in the other tower, and then went to the other tower. They're just getting crazy with it.
We were actually just looking up to see what,
but I like them. I think they're fun. I still think they're fun. I'm like, I could do that.
That's the
I should be with those guys.
You're like, but I got to see what they're going to do.
Yeah.
We looked up what was in the theaters yesterday, and everything was just another movie of something that's already been out.
Right.
And I said that about Fast and the Furious. I was like, when is this going to end? Like it never ends. It's not going to.
It never ends. What I don't like is they keep bringing people back from the dead.
Yeah.
That annoys me. Like, come on, guys. You can't, there's no more actors in the world. You can't find a new actor somewhere. What's the deal with that?
Jumping in on like the 9th.
You lose me to some degree when you bring people back from the dead. Like, as much as I love Game of Thrones and I came to terms with the dragons and the Walking Dead, like have you seen Game of Thrones?
I love
so perfect.
I wish it was like always on.
Yeah. I didn't want it to end. Yeah, but like, okay, the night, the what is it called? The Night Army or whatever, the Army of the Dead.
Yeah.
I came to terms with all of that. But like when Jon Snow got killed and then came back, that I was like, no, that I didn't like that.
That changes everything.
Don't bring people back.
When that happens, then you just kind of like write off anything that happens. You're just like, oh, they'll probably bring him back because there's certain characters where you're like, I couldn't see them dying. Like, and if they did die, I'd probably stop watching the show, you know?
Well, that was the crazy thing about Game of Thrones, though, is that you assumed there were main characters in the beginning, and then Ned Stark gets his head cut off, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, what?
You're like, wait, no, that's bullshit. That must be a trick. He didn't really get executed, and then no, he did. And then they just the storyline was so dense in that show that they just kept coming up with new characters. And that's my point. Like, why can't Fast and Furious find one other race car driver? They got to bring the Chinese dude, whatever he's, Korean, I don't know what he is, back from the dead.
They could do anything, but it's just people get stuck on the characters, you know?
Yeah, well, and then they lost Paul Walker, which I think hurt that movie pretty badly because he was the main character all along. That's it was him and Vin Diesel from the beginning. I like those movies though. They're coming out with a new Rush Hour. They're doing a Rush Hour 4.
I loved Rush Hour.
I love Rush Hour. I love Rush Hour.
That's from our time though. When you had a movie like that was like whenever you were younger, like, I mean, it's just still so funny to me to watch it. And I'll watch something like that with like my kids and they're just like not even smiling. Like, isn't this hilarious?
Well, it's like, well, you know, me watching Teletubbies back in the day. Yeah. Because I'm 10 years older than my brother. And so I was like 13 and he was 3 and he wanted to put Teletubbies on. And it just drove me crazy. I didn't want to watch Teletubbies, but he liked it, or Finding Dory or any of that crap.
That's funny. My brother's 10 years older than me. So that's funny. Usually everybody's real close like that. But when you have that 10-year difference, it is kind of like,
it's a big difference, man. It's a big gap. Yeah. My brother and I didn't talk for quite a while. And then now we're pretty cool. He's been on the podcast a bunch in the last couple months. He keeps coming out here to play poker, and then we podcast. Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, that age, like when you're 25 and your brother's 15, like what do you got to talk about?
Completely different phases of life.
At 21 and 30, we can relate.
That's exactly right. You actually start to get closer as you get older. That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the age difference is less significant the older you get. Like at 40 and 50, you're basically doing the same things. You've probably got a family, got a business, whatever. You're basically doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now, you deadlifted 750 in a contest, right?
Yeah, 2019. That's the most I've done in a competition. So
walk me through how many years did that take? First of all, like when did you start powerlifting, and then how long did it take for you to hit that 750 deadlift?
That was, so I did my very first powerlifting competition in 2014. I think it was like September of 2014. I had always, so I played college football, and then, you know, I loved the training aspect of it. I mean, by the time I got to college, I loved the training more than I enjoyed football, because when you get into college, it's more like a job. It's grueling. It's every day. It's like practice in the morning, film in the evening. And really, you start to lose the hype and the build up to like game day because everything is so time consuming.
It's your
So
whole life.
I enjoyed the training, but when I finished college, it's kind of like every guy, you're like, well, guess I'm not a competitor at anything anymore, And so I still continue to go to the gym, and I would be around people who were power lifters, and just like everyone, I didn't even understand what that even meant. I'm like, are you talking about like Olympic weightlifting? Because that's
Yeah.
kind of like more known, I guess, because you see it in the Olympics. And they were like, no, it's squat, bench, and deadlift. You should try it out. They're like, you're super strong, think you would do great at it. And just like what we were talking about with jujitsu, it was kind of like, well, I I'd hate to get into something like that and find out I'm really not that strong, going against people who are. And so I put it off for maybe probably a year and a half or 2 years of people saying that. And then at one point I was just like, I'm just going to do one.
What were you doing during those year and a half, 2 years? Were you just getting a pump, going to the gym,
I
and
was
just
just
getting a
going to the
pump,
gym,
like meathead stuff, just doing dumbbell flies and push-ups?
Yes. Just
bicep curls in the mirror.
Just random training.
Yeah.
And I remember, during that time when I was first out of college, my job was like crazy hours. So I would have to train in the morning. So it was very subpar training. I would go in like empty stomach, but also trying to lift heavy weights and like just not understanding what I was doing or anything like that, and just getting what you could. And then it was cool to have something to train for again, Sure. And so I did the prep for that. I mean, not very long, but then I did that first competition and I won. And so it really shocked me. I was just like, wow, that I didn't think I would even come close to winning,
Wow.
And for that first one, I'd only signed up for push pull. So I just did bench and deadlift. And I feel like, that was a smart move because I would probably, you're not prepared, to do full power usually. You usually have a lot of missed lifts and things like that. So I could just concentrate on those. And it really spurred me on to continue doing it. I got linked up with like a really, really old school power lifter. He was like up in Pennsylvania, and he would train close to the gym I was at that time. We were in Maryland, and he was like, best advice I could give you is just compete as much as you can. And I was like, wow, that's not what I thought you'd say. I thought people would be like, make sure you're ready, overly prep for this. But he was like, you're going to miss lifts. You're going to have all kinds of stuff that's going to happen. He was like, the experience of competing is what you need to get under your belt. And he was right. You start to lose the that anxious feeling, and you just go out there and perform. And I saw so many jumps in my performance, from that time until all the way until 2017. I mean, my prime numbers were 2016 to 2017. That's when I was at my best for powerlifting. And then
I agree with that guy's advice completely. You want to get real familiar with that feeling of competition. That's why when I was cage fighting, my goal was to win cage fights, but I always did jiu-jitsu tournaments in between, as many as I could do. And I wouldn't peak for them. I wouldn't change my training, wouldn't cut weight, nothing. I cut weight for a few in the beginning, and then I was like, why am I cutting weight for these?
Yeah.
It's essentially just another open mat. And so I would just show up and train just so I can remain in that competitive mode. But yeah, no, that's good advice. I agree with that.
That's
now I don't
really
know how
cool.
much you can do it for powerlifting though, because you do have to peak for those meets. So I think maybe you do a few small ones a year and have a really peak for a big one, maybe a couple big ones a year. Because if you peak too much, then you start losing a lot of your training. There's actually a detraining effect if you're doing that too often.
And he gave me that advice because I was such a rookie, because there was no peak. It was just like everything was so brand new to me that everything is just jumping off the charts, you're learning your form, you're learning like what's heavy to you and what's not.
Yep.
And then he would start to like, put me on like a 10-week block, to where you can actually prepare for something. And that's how we would do it, basically 10 weeks of prep for something. But, there was no real pressure because it's like, you're not going in there to break a world record. That was his initial advice that I kind of got away from, where he's like, why would you cut weight unless you're going to try to win a world record? He's
Right,
like,
right.
there's absolutely no point, because you're going there to lift as much as you possibly can. And if you sacrifice that by cutting 20 pounds, what did you even do?
Sure.
And, as you start to get success, you start to get away from that, because you're like, well, I'm trying to win, and the whole goal was to lift as much as possible. But what I love about jiu-jitsu is just what you said. It's very realistic. It's like, you should be able to compete today,
Yeah.
because if you can't, why are you doing this?
Yeah. Well, especially when you're doing tournaments like Naga, where you're going up against a whole bunch of random dudes.
Mm-hmm.
It's different if you're training for a super fight, like a Craig Jones versus Gordon Ryan situation.
Yeah, that's completely different.
That now you're preparing for a specific opponent, much like a UFC bout.
Yeah.
But if you're just showing up at a tournament and there's going to be 8 dudes in your division, you're going to grapple all of them.
Yeah.
You ought to be able to just do that at any given time.
Yeah, it's real life.
Louis Simmons always said that if you're not ready to go to a contest in 2 weeks, and this is powerlifting, so it's a little bit different. You need a couple of weeks, but if you're not ready to go to a contest in 2 weeks and break a record, you're just out of shape. You're just not ready.
The hard thing with powerlifting is your body gets so beat down
For sure. Yeah.
Because there's different training styles, but for me, I mostly did like the cube method, always leading up to my events. And I think, Brandon Lilly has that cube method.
What is the cube method?
It's basically, for squat, bench, and deadlift every week, you will have an explosive day, a rep day, and a heavy day, and that alternates. And so if bench was explosive, that means like squat is heavy and deadlift is for reps. And then the next week it all changes. And it's like, okay, bench is heavy and now squat is reps and now deadlift is explosive. And so it trains like that. But towards the end,
that's complicated.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that before. Go on.
Towards the end of the 10 weeks, what you started out as like having as your heavy day is now what you do for reps. And so it's basically, progressive load and like also giving you an adequate amount of time off from heavy, what would be considered heavy to you. Because most powerlifters, this is their training method. They're like, oh, I feel good, I'm going to go heavy today.
Sure.
And it's like, well, hold on now. Like, that's not the thing that's going to determine this. And so it just gives you an adequate amount of recovery, but you're still beat down. I don't know that I had many preps where I got to the end and didn't have some type of injury.
That's pretty common with all sports. Rarely does a fighter enter the cage without something a little tweaked or pulled or hurt, some kind of bruise or something. There's always a little something. If you make it to contest day in perfect shape, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
But that's a rare thing.
I think I only did that one time. Now that I'm thinking back about it, and it was the end of 2016. I went into the qualifier for the Arnold Classic, and I was just fresh. Like, I felt great. I felt strong, and I went 9 for 9. I didn't miss one lift all day.
Wow.
And ended with I competed at like I want to say like 235, and I did 650 squat, 485 bench, and 727 deadlift.
Wow.
And I hadn't missed anything all day. I went 9 for 9, and I didn't get injured there at the competition. So like, that was like a very, very rare thing. You think out of all those years, that was the only time that I didn't have something, that I was kind of protecting in the meet. So
that's one of the things that a great coach will be able to do for his athletes, is to get them to have their best performance on contest day. Because nobody cares what you do in the gym.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. You could tap out John Jones in the gym. It doesn't matter. You could squat 1,000 pounds in the gym. It doesn't matter. It's what you do on contest day. And sadly, many athletes have their best performances in the gym.
Yep.
They just can't get it together for the contest for whatever reason. Most of the time, it's because they overtrain leading up to a contest.
Yeah.
Because of that confidence factor that we talked about earlier. They're just insecure about being able to perform at a high level when the time comes. So they start overcompensating by doing a few more reps, a little bit more drilling, a little bit, and then they end up getting hurt and they end up tiring themselves out, wearing themselves out, where they should be resting and peaking for that competition.
That's exactly right. And
that's a coaching thing. And you need to instill that in your athletes as well. Like, you need to put it in your athletes' heads, like what you're talking about with the cube method. I'd never heard of that before, but I guess what it's doing is it's making sure that you train optimally. So
Yeah.
you're not going in every day and maxing out. And so you could set up a training program where through practice and coaching, your athletes will understand that it's okay if you have a little bit left in the tank, save it for the next workout.
Yeah.
Like, you just hit a PR, don't try to hit another PR. You're not going to set all the records in one day.
Mhm.
If you just hit a PR, that's it, you're done maxing out for today. Do something else. Oh, but I feel like I have another one in me. That's fine, save it for next week.
Yeah. That was very, very difficult for me too, like switching to bodybuilding, because in powerlifting, by default, you were just destroyed. You leave you're very, very amped up to go to the gym and anxious because there's an amount of weight probably that you've never tried before that you're about to hit, and or you're supposed to that day. You already know what your percentages are, and there's that anxious like feeling in your stomach.
Yep.
Bodybuilding every day is the same. And so I I carried over that like hardcore mentality, and that's not what it was like for bodybuilding. I had, years where not years, but a year where it's just no growth. And I'm like, man, I'm doing everything I can in there, doing it as hard as I can, as heavy as I can. And I finally had an older bodybuilder tell me, he was like, Matthias, when you go in, imagine this. He's like, you're digging a ditch. And when you go home to eat, you can't eat enough to fill that back up to
Mm.
recover properly. He said the key is to dig some holes while you're there, go home, eat, recover enough so that you can come back and train and do that over and over again. He was like, the key to bodybuilding is the rate at which you can train and recover over and over again. That's the key to all this. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, it's kind of like uh what's his name? Lee Haney. Lee Haney's one of his quotes is stimulate, not annihilate.
Mm.
And he used to say that all the time because he was that type of guy. He's like, he's going in there to stimulate the muscle and leave. And I was the type where it's like, well, if you don't feel like you need to leave in a wheelchair, you shouldn't leave yet. And
That's old school thinking.
Yeah.
That's CT Fletcher
Yeah.
type of stuff. CT Fletcher's like, you need to be crawling back to your
Yeah.
car. Yeah. Yeah. That's not wise.
No, especially if
It
you
worked
don't
for
pair up the
CT
nutrition.
Fletcher to some degree, but I always wonder, a guy like CT Fletcher, if he did train optimally and didn't waste himself every single workout. I mean, look at how big and strong he was with training the way he did. If he actually did it correctly and allowed himself adequate recovery, who knows what he could have accomplished.
Yeah. And you look at guys like there's trade-offs there that you have to accommodate. If you're going to train that way, you've got people like Dorian Yates is a great
Mhm.
example where he was hardcore and heavy, but then he took like 2 days off after that. He wasn't an everyday training type of guy.
Yeah, I
He's going
think
there and then he'll take a good amount of time off to recover properly and then go back and destroy it again.
yeah, I think he did 4 workouts a week,
Mhm.
and each workout was about 45 minutes,
Yeah.
and he went to complete concentric as well as eccentric failure was his key to success. He said that he would do so concentric means lifting, eccentric means lowering. He would do, let's say he's doing bicep curls. He would keep going until he can no longer lift the weight, but you always fail concentrically before you fail eccentrically.
Yeah.
So he would go until he cannot lift the weight anymore. Then he would have somebody help him lift the weight, and then he would lower it, and he would train to eccentric failure
Yeah.
as well. So just completely destroying the muscle. And then, yeah, by the time, if you're doing 4 workouts a week, by the time you got back to that muscle group, probably a good amount of time has gone by,
Yeah.
probably like at least 5 days.
Most people too, they have no idea what that is, like what he's talking about of like true failure. Like
Correct.
to them, they're like, well, I usually do 10, so I did 15. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you gotta watch this guy train. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And your training partner is just as much of a big critical aspect to that style of training because they should know you. And you can't sandbag that person, because you can make faces and like be yelling or whatever, but that person knows what you can lift and they know when you're close to injury or maybe if you've been nursing a hamstring thing, and they should be able to push you beyond that. But for the most part, people are just getting through the workout. Like he was very intentional.
For sure. Well, not only that, but when it comes to training partners, you need people to talk shit.
Yeah.
Louis Simmons always said that the number one thing you need in a gym is a training partner, and number two is a power rack.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever been to Westside. You ever been there?
Nope.
So I spent a week at Westside
That's
about
cool.
probably 6 or 7 years ago. I had to go meet Louis Simmons. One of the things that just really, really saddens me is that he died before I was famous enough to have him on the podcast. I would have loved to sit down with that guy.
Awesome.
I did sit down and talk to him quite a bit while I was at Westside, and he talked shit about my deadlift, but you know, I wasn't podcasting back then. But anyway, when you're in there, there's an atmosphere of like people, like the guys are talking shit and challenging each other nonstop, not at each other's throats. They'll bet money on who's going to have the biggest PR that day. It's such a competitive environment that you have to grow. You have to get stronger. There's no other way around it.
That's critical, though. That environment is critical.
Absolutely.
And you can tell, like,
in everything, whether it's business or bodybuilding or fighting, in anything, you need those people around you. And if they're not pushing like that, you just like, it's you're not going to grow as much as you possibly could.
You want to be around some people too that, you know, it's odd to watch them lift. Like some of the guys at strength build and stuff like that, they're strong, and it's cool to see that, because you don't want to be the strongest person. You don't want to be, you know, just like filling your own head, you know, filling up your own ego, you know, by people being like, oh, you're big and all this stuff. It's not going to help you, you know? And
well, I've always said, if I'm the strongest person in the gym, that's a bullshit gym.
Yeah.
Cause I'm not that strong.
You know, that's what I was saying the other day though, about like going down there and doing some open mat with y'all. I was like, it's such a good environment because, you know, no one here is insecure. Everyone's here to train, and they have within their mind, because I can hear the responses back, because, you know, I'll start out by being like, hey, you know, I'm trying to learn. I don't know this, like just trying to be clear before we get started.
Yeah.
And they kind of give you that humble response back, because they know, like, well, with this sport, anybody can win. And
sure.
And that's such a cool feeling, instead of like people being like, well, let me tell you how to do this. Let me tell you how to do this.
Well, you have those douchebags in every gym. There's at 10th Planet San Antonio, almost everybody that I've rolled with is a really nice person.
Yeah.
And every now and then I encounter a dickhead, but they're usually from another gym.
Yeah.
And they're just there for the open mat, and then you don't see them again. There's one little skinny fuck who just annoys the fuck out of me, man. I rolled with him one time, and he just does the weirdest things. He covers your mouth and puts his elbow in your, like, he just does weird things. Yeah. And look, and covering people's mouths is a legitimate technique. That I'm not just don't do it in training. I don't want your sweaty palm on my lips, you know? So I rolled with him one time, and usually I start out a little bit light. I'm like, okay, let's feel this guy out. Let's see what they can do. If they get me if they end up in a dominant position, that's fine. I'll work my way out. But after about 30 seconds, I'm like, okay, I know what this guy's about. And then I just smushed him. I just crushed him, because he's like probably 140 pounds or something, 150 pounds. So I held him down. I'm like, bro, you ain't getting up. Like I just smushed him. I don't think I even tapped him out. I was just like, I'm just going to hold him down and just torture this guy. Yeah. I'm going to put my knee on his face, knee on belly. Just going to make him miserable, and I'm never going to roll with him again. And that's what I did. But those people are rare. You do run into them in every gym. Gyms take after the coach. Jiu-jitsu gyms, and probably strength gyms as well, they take after the coach, especially in martial arts, I think. Yeah. The way the coach, if you have a humble, confident coach, you're going to have humble, confident fighters. If you have a dickhead coach who is insecure and is trying to pretend that he's a tough guy, everybody in that gym is going to be insecure, pretending to be tough guys. And those are not good training environments.
That's something I love about jiu-jitsu, though, is like the vast majority of the people that I've met, you know, they're a different breed. You know, they understand that they're a dangerous person.
Yeah.
And it's a cool kind of team environment to be around, because everyone, usually they're very relaxed and like themselves, and they're not worried about going anywhere or being around anybody, or even if somebody was to say something bad to a group, you know, it's like going to a bar. Like, I used to like really, really avoid going out anywhere, because, you know, when you're bigger and you go out somewhere, it's like a target. And a lot of guys who are drunk,
they're sizing you up automatically.
Well, they say something just to go ahead and take the spotlight off of it to say like, oh, you're big. Like I used to be big like that, like something random. And it creates this weird tension. So I would always avoid it. But like jujitsu guys, like they could care less. And they're even controlled,
Because most of them are little.
Yeah. But for the most part, what's cool is like,
especially at 10 Planet. 10 Planet is like the little guy gym.
No. I've been to some gyms that it's you're like, I don't know how good these people would do in a fight somewhere. Some of the guys down there, you can tell they at least train, something else outside of just jujitsu. But what's really cool is they could even have somebody say something to them and they'd probably just laugh it off.
Sure.
It's usually the guys who they're untrained that they're wanting to immediately get into an altercation. You're
Absolutely.
Like, come on.
Yeah. And when you're hanging out around a bunch of guys all the time and you guys are choking the shit out of each other and competing constantly, it's just, those are the coolest guys to be around. Those are the most fun guys to be around. Like I've always noticed that I get along best with guys who played sports in high school or college or maybe military, because there's that same kind of shit talking and just testing each other. And I feel like men who grow up without ever experiencing that, like the guys who in high school didn't play any sports, never went to the gym, don't do that kind of boy type of banter where you're pushing each other and trying to test each other's limits. They just don't know how to hang. They don't know how to just be cool and hang and take a joke and you say something and now their feelings are hurt. Now it's like, I can't hang out with you, man. Like you gotta,
what I think is a key difference is this right here. Sports that are objective, like you're either going to lift this off the ground or you're not, or you're either going to submit this person or they're going to submit you. Like it's a yes or no. Those people who compete in those sports, they're very just even, right? They're like, hey, I realize I can lose, but
I know what you mean. Most of the time. Yeah.
That's what was really hard for me with bodybuilding is you would have people who lose, but then they're like, I shouldn't have lost.
Right. My quads are better. Yeah.
Like,
right.
You did though.
And it is true though, because it is subjective because it's based on the judge's perception.
Right.
So it is true.
Yeah.
That is absolutely a fact. And that's one thing that CT Fletcher said actually, which is why he didn't get into bodybuilding, or he was, and then he switched to powerlifting because he goes, if I lift that weight properly, nobody can deny that lift. But I can be on stage flexing bigger than all of them, and they can say, "No, that guy's physique looks better," and it's subjective. That's a
you and I bet right now we could describe what we would prefer, like what would be great to us, and it'd be absolutely different. And that's what's really hard about that sport because it doesn't even just come down to symmetry. It's like some people like mass monsters, and some people are like, I prefer the old school aesthetic like Arnold. And you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm on stage,
So explain to me, because I really don't know bodybuilding that well. Explain to me the difference between old school, what you just described as old school aesthetic, like Arnold, versus how it is nowadays. What exactly is the difference?
Now they have actual divisions that are different. So they have open bodybuilding now is based off of your size. There is an aspect there that's, symmetry and the aesthetic, the look of everything. But for the most part, the size is a big portion of, who's the best up there. It can't be sloppy, obviously, but it's about muscle size. Now you have classic bodybuilding is a whole different division now. And it's based off of the V taper, the waist to shoulder ratio, things like that. And I actually competed in both, but you've got different posing as well. In open bodybuilding, the most muscular. So you've got mandatory posing where you'll have to do quarter turns. And then you'll have like a routine round of posing that you go through, like the front double bicep, the front lat spread, things like that. The front lat spread is not a pose in classic bodybuilding. They will ask you to do like your favorite classic pose. The most muscular isn't really like a popular thing. It's very, very much focused on like the artistic side of posing. So it should be very smooth. You'll see a lot of people do their posing to like different style of like almost like very artistic music. It's slower and
Yeah.
things like that. And then, Arnold used to say all the time, he would hate on like the newer generation of bodybuilders because he'd say their posing is terrible. It's like, it's not something they spend a lot of time on. And this is an art form. He would say like bodybuilding to him was like, you're sculpting something, and your presentation of that was so important to him. And so that was a big part of why they separated it. And,
Okay.
like, hey, if you want to, because you'll see a lot of the big boys, they kind of just walk around stage and like hyping up the crowd, and then they'll hit a pose, and then they'll walk to this side of stage and then hype up the crowd and hit another pose. And they're just displaying what they have. Classic physique or classic bodybuilding, it's all timing, like it's all going with the music, and it's filling up that full amount of time that they have on stage. It's very smooth, you can see a big difference in the routines. So
it was either, I think it was Dorian Yates, might have been Arnold. I don't know. One of them, I'm pretty sure, said that bodybuilders nowadays are too big, but don't have talent,
right.
Whatever the fuck that means.
So, a key difference too in classic bodybuilding, there is a weight limit by height. And so your weight limit would be different than mine.
Oh, I didn't know that. I never thought about that. I thought you just got as big as possible.
So that's open bodybuilding. So open bodybuilding, the super heavyweight class is 225 and up. And you'll have bodybuilders on stage who weighed 300 pounds in the off season, and they're like 250 pounds of muscle on stage, like 5% body fat. And just a lot of times the knock that they will get is like, hey, you got a big waist, And so back in the day, that was not something that was appealing to a bodybuilder. They always wanted to keep that V taper, that small waist and wide shoulders. And, a lot of the growth hormone and things like that people added in, it made that bubble gut looking like a bigger stomach. And so old school bodybuilders, they're like, that doesn't look good. That's not what they remembered bodybuilding being,
Times have changed. I'm looking at the Instagram of Ross.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about him the other day, bro. Like, talk about a massive bodybuilder. Yeah. Jesus Christ. This motherfucker is enormous. Jesus, bro.
And you got to think too,
like does he have body dysmorphia?
Most
does he look in the mirror and he thinks he's skinny?
I'm sure.
Like, this dude is like, massive.
I'm not big enough. That's what most bodybuilders would say to you.
Jesus, man. Like, he's got muscles that don't even have names. I've seen him work out at the gym.
Think about, so if you competed against him, you'd have to weigh 50, 60 pounds more than him just to appear the same size. That's the key. Bodybuilders,
why?
A lot of them,
because I'm taller.
Yes. When you get up by them, they'll be 5'6", 5'5", but 230 pounds, and they'll look like they're 4 foot wide.
So is there an ideal height for bodybuilders?
Sure. It's the only sport I've ever been a part of where people lie about how short they are.
What?
They're like, no, I'm 5'4". I'm like, what? Because when they measured me the first time, I had to do classic bodybuilding, and it was like 5'10". And that guy was like, oh man, you're gonna have to really put on a lot of size in the off season, because that's like tall for bodybuilding. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, you'd have to be up to 280 or something like that, and then cut down. And I'm like, man, that's the weirdest thing to me, to hear people talking about their height that way. Because most men, they're like lying about how tall they are.
Yeah. They're trying to wear cowboy boots to get an extra inch.
Put some little heels inside of their boots,
Yeah, don't do that. That's embarrassing. Wear cowboy boots. That's fine. That's the best way to gain a couple inches. Mm-hmm. As a man, just put on. I'm 6'2" with cowboy boots. It's great.
Yeah, see, in Texas too, it's acceptable.
Oh yeah, it's great. Gentleman's attire.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love cowboy boots.
So most bodybuilders, you would say, have some kind of body dysmorphia. Do you think you have some of that? I mean, you're quite a bit smaller now than when you were bodybuilding. So was there, like, did you ever recognize that you're actually pretty large, but you just wanted to get bigger for the sake of competition? Or do you think, like, do you feel skinny right now?
I don't feel skinny right now. I think it took me getting away from bodybuilding to have some perspective, because just like anything else, when you're immersed in it, all you look at, all you research are the top people.
Right.
And so you have zero perspective as to like what you should actually appreciate.
Right.
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 You look at yourself in the mirror and maybe your arms are big, but you're like, but my legs are small. And then, or maybe it's usually vice versa. Like somebody has big legs and they're like, but my upper body is just not there. There's always, it's a critical sport. You know, they start from the ground up. That's why the judges are so low, and they look up and they judge you from
Ah,
the ground up, literally for symmetry, size, and even deficiencies, right? Something that's completely out of your control. You and I could have the exact same body fat, the exact same muscle size, but your abs are like this and
mhm.
mine are like this, and I win. That's what's so hard about bodybuilding. And, you know,
That makes sense.
that's why I think
That's why it's a bullshit sport.
this sport in itself is very hard on women, I think, because one, women are already very, very critical of themselves.
Yeah.
And there's already a ton of things out of their control, you know, just genetically. And voluntarily standing in front of people and being told that you don't look as good as you could is like mentally just a mind fuck, you know. And
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
I always feel bad because I see, you know, generally men will assume like, especially in their first years of bodybuilding, like I am fucking jacked right now. You know, they're like talking on that side of things, but women, you know, especially if they go for that bikini division or things like that, it's always like you're not small enough and you develop an eating disorder. You know,
Mhm.
I've seen where girls will put like chocolate in their mouth just to taste it and spit it out. And I'm like, what are you doing right
Jeez.
now? You know, like
Yeah.
it's a bad
That's
setup.
sad.
And so it's one of those things like I feel like the further away I get from it, you know, the more in reality I get to actually get to see some perspective, like just being around people, you know, and them being like, man, it's really impressive, you know, for you to be able like jiu-jitsu, right? I don't even think about it anymore because my mind's locked in on like this guy's a badass. And then
I was just gonna say, like, you must realize how much larger you are than the average person from jujitsu when you're
yeah,
locking up with these dudes that are like 150 pounds,
yeah,
or even me. Like, I'm 205. I'm not a small guy, but when we grappled, like, there's fuck, dude, your back and your
yeah.
torso, you're huge.
But it's like, you know, it takes me like just being around people and just it makes you grateful, right? Because you know, before I wouldn't even consider it, you know,
Yeah.
and to the point like this, like this is even as recent as this year, because you got to think that was just the end of last year that I started like pushing away. I I would be like, I would say all the time, going to that gym I was telling you about up north, I was like, I would never be in here with my shirt off.
Factory?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was like, I wouldn't be in here with my shirt off because I wouldn't feel ready to do that. That's a bodybuilder's like mentality if you're outside of prep. And then now it's so fucking hot here in Texas. I was, you know, I'll be at strength build. I'm like, I'm taking the shirt off, you know,
Yeah.
and actually appreciate the way you look, even though you're not like shredded down, ready to go on stage. And what's so funny about bodybuilding is even when you're in prep, you're not happy then. It's like a in between haircut. You know, you're not big, but you're not shredded down. So you feel small. And then no one understands that your prime, the pictures that you see on Instagram of people on stage, they look that way for one day,
If that, yeah.
if
Yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 for sure.
And then it just starts, you know, going away. My favorite though, just I guess from being a power lifter, I love the bulk look, you know, of like when you can look at somebody and you're like, that guy's jacked,
Mhm.
but he's also just like big, you
Yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I never really enjoyed like the shredded down look just because I felt like death. And you're not strong. It's not functional.
Right. That's one of the key differences between powerlifting and bodybuilding is in contest, a powerlifter is at their strongest,
Yeah.
whereas a bodybuilder is at their weakest.
Yes. In contest, a power lifter about to go out. I said this to somebody the other day because I had like my playlist still that I used to play and I would just listen to it. And I actually had somebody filming me one time, like sitting somewhere, like getting ready to go out. I was like, a power lifter about to go out onto the stage, they could tear someone in
As a
half.
scary
It's
person, yeah.
they're in this whole different world. It gives me like cold chills talking about it right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
But a bodybuilder, you feel like you're about to die. Like I was eating like rice cakes with peanut butter with salt on it, no drink for like 28 hours, just like
Fuck.
dry as a desert in my
Oh
mouth,
my
just being like,
God.
I just got to get done with this, you know?
Yeah, you're just trying not to cramp.
Yeah.
That's how common is that? Like
Oh.
cramping on stage because you're so dehydrated, you're up there flexing. I
Mhm.
always feel that way when fighters weigh in and they're on the scale and they do that flex on the scale. I'm like, why are
Yeah.
you doing that,
Yeah.
man? Like you could lock up at any moment.
That's just it. Bodybuilding's like this crazy science experiment because my very first show, I cramped up. The very first quarter turn, I turned and just seamed across my chest,
Ugh.
both pecs.
You could probably see the muscle
Oh yeah.
cramping.
And then you're trying to act like nothing. You know?
Oof.
And then they're like face the rear and I turned, and when I flexed my back, lat cramped.
Oh my
And once
God.
that happens, you're done.
You're
Like,
for
there's
sure.
nothing you can do anymore.
Are you taking some kind of electrolyte supplement or like what do you do to avoid that?
It's like very, very difficult to find balance because you're wanting to dehydrate yourself so that you can see every single muscle striation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're actually trying to just get right there close enough to where you don't cramp up. And
Yeah.
it's a very difficult thing. That's why a lot of people will like load like sodium and stuff like that so that they can actually feel something, because you just feel like bones, honestly. And nobody thinks that. Like, you don't feel as full as you do like right now, when you're eating pasta and stuff like that.
Sure.
But
Yeah, you feel bloated when you eat pasta. Oh man.
I like, and you know what's so
It's a good
crazy?
feeling sometimes, but
Well, that's what I say. I can tell by the way you're talking about it. One of my buddies, like, he's always been a bodybuilder, and he likes to have kind of like that light feeling on his stomach when he goes to train.
yeah.
But where powerlifting was like my love, like I want to feel just like I'm about to throw up bloated, like before I go there, because
Really?
I feel so strong. That's where I'm used to that feeling. Powerlifters will eat until they're about to vomit before they go out because the calories like give you energy.
Well, that's I always see Richie at the gym. He's one of the strongmen at Strength Build, and he's always chewing down on gummy bears between
Yeah.
sets. I guess that gives him a little bit of sugar that he needs to get through the workout because he's pretty
Yeah.
lean for a strong man, and the guy's pretty ripped.
Yeah.
And so I guess maybe he trains on a light stomach, but he needs that little bit of sugar from the gummy
Yeah.
bears. It's funny. He's just this giant dude deadlifting 600-700 pounds, whatever it is. And he's in there eating with a little pack of gummy
I
bears, just
showed
eating a
him
few between sets.
the intra workout that I'll drink. Like, that's helpful because basically, I mean, you start to feel, and I'm sure you've felt it before, like an adrenaline dump. Like, when you're pouring sweat and you're not eating, your body is just burning through calories. And so you'll feel like I'm about to like faint. Like, that's how you'll feel sometimes. And so you'll see a lot of people will eat gummy bears, Skittles. I used to keep like a Jolly Rancher in my mouth, and it keeps your blood sugar up so that you don't feel like you're just crashing. Because when you eat a ton of carbs, like powerlifters and strongmen do, it's just in and out, in and out. Your body starts to just cycle through it really fast and use all that up for energy. And then you almost feel like I need to eat right now. Like, I've felt like that a ton.
Yeah.
And that's why they'll, keep some type of sugar in their system to keep from feeling that way.
It's pretty interesting how different people do have different approaches to dieting and exercise. Some people will only train on an empty stomach. Typically, jiu-jitsu fighters, they love to train on an empty stomach. There's this jiu-jitsu champion, Mike. I always forget his last name. I don't know how to say it. Mike something. All he eats is pasta and pizza. You know about this guy? Let me see. What's his name?
It's a big part of it that, people put pressure on you. That changes things.
Mike Musu. I don't know how to say his last name. Musumeci or something. Mikey Musumeci, Musumeci, is an American submission grappler and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt competitor, a 4-time world champion and Pan American champion in colored belts. Musumeci is a 5-time IBJJF black belt world champion and the first American to win more than one IBJJF world title at black belt. He's 26.
Dang.
Yeah, the guy's a badass. He was on the Joe Rogan Experience and he's saying that all he eats is pasta and pizza. He doesn't eat throughout the day. He trains all day. Then when the training's done, he goes home. He has a massive pizza and pasta dinner And then that lasts him until the next day.
That's
And
really wild.
Just once every 24 hours, he just throws down on a ton of carbs.
You know, your diet, the diet that works for you is completely 100% based on how quickly you can digest it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And
That's
some
that's
people
all.
are more efficient at metabolizing carbs and
Right.
some people aren't. Some
So
people,
he must be great at like getting all that, through his system, or he'd develop some issues, For most people, if you were to eat in that way, especially before bed, you'd be miserable. But
yeah.
if he's got that metabolism that can crank through it, that's good for him. But a lot of bodybuilders, that's the thing that will dictate your changes with your carb source. A lot of them, like for me, especially, like I liked to blend oats and put them in a shake. I felt like it was like faster. When you're eating like 6,000 calories, it's like any way that I can ingest this without chewing anymore will
Right,
be
right.
better.
Yep.
But I started to notice like my stomach would be so bloated, and it was from not being able to properly digest the oats as well. And so we would have to switch to white rice, or like change it up to something that I could digest better, or throw in some other vegetables or whatever I could to assist with that. But
Vegetables are a
everything.
problem when you're trying to eat 6,000 calories a day. There's not enough calories in them.
You don't even
can't
want them.
No, it's just extra work. You're just chewing and chewing and chewing.
Fiber, though. That's why. It's
Yeah.
just the fiber.
Fibers, the fiber debate's been an interesting one over the years too.
Yeah.
Some say you need fiber, some say you don't. Like you got these people that are on carnivore diets and they're like, I don't need fiber. What do I need it for? And then some people say, well, you need fiber for digestion, but then too much fiber will actually make you constipated. And so the fiber, so if you're eating a high fiber diet, you need to drink a lot of water. And I don't know.
It's just based off of you.
I don't know what to make out of the fiber situation.
That's what I think so funny.
I don't focus on it. For me, it's never a focus of mine. Like, oh, I need to get more fiber in my diet. The only thing that I sometimes concern myself with, not that much because I'm not competing in anything and haven't for a while, so I'm not that precise with my nutrition. But there are days where I'm like, you know what, I need a little more protein. That's the only thought I ever have nutrient wise.
That's it.
Is like I need some protein. I don't concern myself too much with vitamins. I may be vitamin deficient for all I know. I have no idea, but I don't concern myself too much with that. Minerals are a big one. I started putting salt in my water when I go to jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like it's made a difference in my ability to last longer and train harder in the later rounds of open mat.
Yeah.
A little bit of salt goes a long way. And that's pretty much it. I focus on sodium, potassium, and as far as supplements go, that's about it. Fish oil.
Yeah. I take a lot of that.
Aside from that, it's just
to kill you from jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not grappling that much these days, so it's not really a problem. But
it's weird. I think it's like the gi. When you have to grab the gi a lot, like I noticed my elbows starting to hurt just from just that grip.
Yeah, so you got to work around that.
Yeah,
you're holding isometrically a little bit too much, probably.
But what you're talking about, like with the like the fiber, anything really, that's what's so funny about all of the fad diets that come out. It's like, literally no one can just hand you something and say this will work for you.
Right.
It's completely based off of you. But what you said is absolutely correct. The one thing that you have to do, especially for people who travel for work and stuff like that, is just to prioritize your protein. It's like, then at least you're recovering.
Correct. And that's the big one, is recovery. Yes.
But here's the key. And it's like, a lot of people will be like, well, how do you maintain size? And it's like, okay, you have to understand this. It's like there's an amount of food that you can eat to return to the gym and be rested and ready to go again. You still might be a little bit sore. Now, then there's another amount that's a little bit more, that's enough to eat for you specifically to fully recover, and you're not even sore anymore. And now there's a surplus amount that's usually beyond your comfort level, that's enough to grow. And usually most people just eat enough to return to the gym. And so there's still like, I ate a couple times a day, I still feel a little bit sore from maybe training something 2 days ago, but this is just what I got done. And they do that for a long time. And the thing that you risk there is like, well, At best, if you continued on that plan, you'd stay exactly the same. If you missed a couple days, you'd get smaller. And if you bump it up to the recovery, if you're hitting on that just about the same, you might grow a little bit one area or another. It'll completely be based off the days that you go into a surplus, but usually you'll remain about the same. The only chance to actually train and grow a muscle is for you to be in a calorie surplus.
Sure.
That's it.
Is that why bodybuilders put on so much weight off season?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get it just right to where you're eating just enough.
Yeah.
And to where it's actually a surplus to where you're gaining size, but not really getting fat. So I think bodybuilders just go overboard and they do get a little bit fat out of season. To some, I think it's probably a mental break too. Like, fuck it. I'm just going to, it might be like a self-comforting kind of thing. Like I'm just going to eat and have fun and fuck the diet. I'm not going to worry about it. Cause then when the cutting starts, now everything's super strict and you're weighing your food and counting all your calories and all that. So
it's better. It's
you take
easier.
a mental break from it.
Yeah. It gets your body responds faster each time.
That is true. Your body's like, okay, I know what we're doing.
And there's a piece of it too, that if you've decided you want to do bodybuilding, for the most part, most of them have pretty good genetics if they've been successful at it. And so, like I said before, there's a trade-off that you have to understand where a calorie is a calorie. And this is a big time debate too, because you got people that are like, oh, well, that's not, obviously if you're in prep, there's good calories that you have to eat. But when you're training to be strong and you're training to grow, that's a unit of energy. That's it. And it's like, so you've got something here where you're like, you're either going to have enough to have the proper output of energy, or you're not going to have enough. And what you have to understand with the trade-off is that if you decide that you're here to grow and you decide I'm going to train to get bigger and stronger, what am I willing to put on to gain this muscle? And so you have to understand there's absolutely no way, and everybody will talk about it. This is the debate. People are like, no, you can put on just muscle. And I'm like, okay, but there will be some fat there if you're in a surplus.
Yeah.
And so for the most part, to be safe, you should eat some things, right? Like you should eat the pizza every now and then if you've decided I'm here to grow, I'm not here to cut, so that you can be a little bit excessive and allow yourself some room and say to yourself, well, for every 1 pound of muscle I put on, I'm willing to put on 3 pounds of fat, knowing that all I have to do to lose that fat is to make the switch and start putting out more output than I take in and just cut the fat off. But that trade-off that people make and this is very challenging for people when they first start, they say, well, I don't want to get fat in off season. It's what they always say. It's like, well, unless you're very intentional about it, you won't just get fat because you're training and you're doing things that you normally do. You're not going to look like you should step on stage, but it's not going to be random. But people say, well, I want to stay stage ready. And you're like, okay. And so when it comes time to prep again, they look at best the exact same that they did the last time.
That makes sense.
Because it's such a fine line, right?
Yeah.
And they never ate enough to put on size. The whole thing, you might train an entire year, and once you've been doing it a while, at best, if you're very, very lucky, like think 2 to 5 pounds of muscle, like that'd be crazy in an entire year to put on that much. Because what did you think about the weight you had to put on? Like what I said, that was 20 pounds maybe for you to get that 5 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
20 pounds of body weight. And then when you cut down, if you did it right, like if you were 80% of the time spot on, you might have added 5 pounds of muscle if you're lucky.
Just real quick, pull the mic up a little bit. You're fading a little bit. Is
that good?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, you're fading a little bit.
I got that Batman voice.
That's a lot of chicken breast.
Yeah.
Imagine being a chicken. You're just fucked. Just like you were designed, you were put on this earth to just get killed by bodybuilders. You're just like, You taste good. You have a lot of protein.
Yeah.
You're just like put on this earth for bodybuilders just to
lean.
kill you constantly. Give me those chicken breasts every day.
I don't like chicken
You're like
anymore.
10 of them. Yeah, I bet you probably got sick of
Eggs,
it, right?
especially like eggs too. Like all of the things that I used to go to as like the protein source. I used to eat a ton of like
Yeah, I can see that.
turkey, the lean turkey
Mhm.
patties. I can't even stand to even smell it anymore.
Yep. Yeah,
And,
and
you know,
yeah.
Dorian Yates is a vegetarian now.
Is he really?
Yeah, and
What
it's
the
like
fuck?
because it's like think about it, years of just eating
Yeah,
like
but
8,000
still.
calories of beef. You know, it's like
Yeah, but that's like giving up women because you've had, it's like, oh well, I've been going out with women.
oh, that's not.
Been going out with women for 10 years, so I'm just gonna give them up now. Like, no, you still miss it after a while. You may need a break every now and
I'm
then.
sure he might eat a cheeseburger every now and then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not gonna go full vegetarian.
No, I don't think so.
No, and that's like, what do vegetarians eat? They just eat carbs all day.
I think a lot of people just like to say they're vegetarian. You know?
Yeah, it's kind of a flex. It's a social flex, especially if you live in Austin. It's a weird thing. It might get you laid in Austin.
Yeah,
you meet a girl. Hey, babe, I'm a vegetarian. Oh, wow.
Oh, he cares. He cares.
Yeah,
he really cares.
Yeah. Oh, you want to come meet my dog?
Now I know what you're gonna be doing.
Yeah. So, okay, let's we touched a little bit on you training for that 750-pound deadlift earlier. I want to get into the specifics of your training for that lift. So what was your multi-year plan like? I assume it took several years. So okay, let's look at it this way. You got out of college, you were playing football, and then you fucked around for a year and a half, and then you decided you were going to power lift.
Yeah.
What were you deadlifting then when you first decided to power lift?
So my first competition, I want to say maybe it was 575 was the final deadlift.
So about 575, and then how many years till you hit that 750?
5 years.
5 years. Okay, so during those 5 years, how did you go from 575 to 750? What was your multi-year plan? What was your monthly plan? So did you do block periodization or cube periodization, or
I
break it all down? Take as much time as you need. Break it down.
I want to show you.
Okay.
I did that cube method the majority of the time. The only thing I would say that was different from like a normal like power lifter is I would also throw in accessory work. Most power lifters, like if they've really, really committed to this, the only thing they're doing, they only squat, they only bench, they only deadlift. And I was very big on like, I did not want to just look fat, you know, I didn't want to go and train all the time and just be this guy that people are like, do you work out? You know? So I would throw in extra. This is the cube method. So you can see how it basically breaks it out by week.
Is this an Apple phone?
Yeah.
Could you airdrop it so I can show it so people can see it?
Yeah.
Let me pull it up right here.
The MacBook.
Yeah, one of them.
Yeah.
Yep, got it.
Got it.
Okay, cool. That way people can see what we're talking about. Yep, got it.
Okay.
Pulling it up.
So
right now.
I would do that, and I would throw in, you know, bodybuilding movements or what I thought would assist me with those lifts. And you know, your form starts to improve early on, just like jiu-jitsu, you know, you're trying to figure out like what is accommodating to my body, you know, what would be the best position for me here. Same thing for powerlifting. Where's the best stance for me squatting? What's the best grip for me benching? And that stuff changes over time. Deadlift specifically though, you know, for every person that trains, there's going to be a lift that is just easier for them and just comes more natural to them.
Sure.
And just like
biomechanics,
every human being, just like they have a muscle group that takes off faster, that grows faster, grows easier, you know, the area that's the path of least resistance for you.
Yes.
And so deadlift for me, just it felt like not as challenging. It felt also just low risk, because if I didn't get it, I could just drop it, you know? So it was something that, you know, it was my lift. I felt like I was even built to do it, you know?
So you were working out 4 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday?
That was just for the powerlifting training per se. I would typically, and this was again back in my days where I was just trying to figure it out, I would typically work out every day. And
Okay.
Sundays, I would say, would be my, and I've got all of my books for every year of powerlifting where I wrote down every single lift.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah.
You're not taking any PRs though with this plan. I don't see any PRs on here. It's all 80%,
Well,
85%, 90%.
You are, because
95 is the heaviest. I
You
see
see
a
how
heavy deadlift at 95%.
but do you see how it switches for you to where
Yes.
eventually what used to be heavy on bench is now a rep day? You see the percentages, how eventually you'll have rep PRs is
How are
basically what you'll have.
but rep PRs don't matter for a powerlifter because you're judged on a 1 rep max. So
Right.
how are you determining what your 1 rep max could potentially be in a contest?
So after you get to this point, you know, something that used to be a 2 rep max for you is something that you're doing like 6 times.
Correct.
And
But
so
but there's a difference between strength, speed,
Right.
and absolute strength.
Yeah.
And a 1 rep max is absolute strength.
So something I used to do to acclimate for those lifts is I would do a lot of like holds, right? Like I would, for the bench, I would get the weight that I was going to shoot for, and I would unrack it, hold, and then I'd have somebody help me rack it. And
Okay.
so there's a big part of powerlifting where, you know, your body goes into shock when you first unrack the weight. And usually that's where the lift is just missed mentally. You know,
Because
I-
you're handling weights you've never handled before.
it's just your body is like, whoa, what's going on? That's why they'll wear a mouthpiece, because they bite down so hard. There's
Yeah.
a nerve, you know, that basically will shut you down and say, stop what you're doing.
Mm.
And you're tricking yourself, right? That's like back in the day, like prisoner of war, they put something in their mouth because they're torturing somebody. They don't want them to black out. You know, there's a nerve that runs down your jaw that's like a governor for your body. And
Is that what gets people knocked out when they get
Yes.
punched in the jaw?
Yep. And so I remember too, so in the prep leading up to the Arnold, I unracked 765 on squat and just held it. And I just remember being like, this feels like the world on me, like crushing me.
Yeah.
I could just barely hold it. And so it gets that out of your system. You're used to feeling that weight.
I would do that in training from time to time. Say I can deadlift 400 pounds. I would put the bar in the power rack right above the knees, and I would go 100 pounds above my max
Yeah.
and just stand up with it, just lock it out so
Yeah.
that my central nervous system registers that heavier load.
Yeah.
Just once you hold that bar in your hands, your CNS registers that weight. And so it prepares you for it for the future.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And just like what you said, the like that spot on your hand,
Yeah.
you know, for bench. I remember a couple of benches where I had not done that leading up to the competition, and that unrack was like, oh man. And you know,
But that's my point. Like, wouldn't you want to test your max effort strength in the gym? Would you want to hit 100% plus lift? That way, you know what weights you're going to be lifting.
Some people will get close to it, and I think too close to it, because in my opinion, you should not max there, because it's not the same as the competition. The adrenaline is not there.
Of course.
You've not rested properly. And so the last week of that training block is just a week off of nothing. And you're just allowing yourself time to recover, just like what you're talking about with jiu-jitsu. Like mentally you can recover, you can eat, you know, you can prepare. But when somebody randomly maxes out in the gym without properly ramping up to that max, there's a very, very high risk of injury. The equipment is usually not the same as what you will use in the meet.
Why
you know?
not? Why wouldn't you train with the same equipment that you're going to compete in?
Well, we go somewhere where we have the luxury of having that, but the vast majority of people, they're in a commercial gym. you know, and like
Oh yeah,
a
well,
Gold's Gym or
that's their
something is like
problem.
this narrow bench. You know? Well, when I was
Yeah,
when
you
I
don't
was in
want to you don't
Georgia,
want to train at those
there wasn't a
places.
place like that. You know, there was nowhere for me to go that had like a power rack or anything like that. You know,
Jeez, that's
and
why I
so
love Strength Built.
yeah,
Strength Built
they
is
got
just
everything.
badass, man. That gym is badass.
Yeah, and
Like I love that gym. I walked in there as soon as I moved to New Braunfels 2 years ago. I found it on Google. I looked up gyms in the area and
yeah,
I went there and I was like, this is it.
yeah,
I'm training here.
it's cool because it's also just like an atmosphere that it feels like people are there training for something.
And there's some people in there that when they're in there working out, I train harder just
Yeah,
by default. Rick Laribus is one.
yeah.
That
Oh,
motherfucker, when he's working out, because he's got his headphones on and he's just like grunting and screaming, yelling out shit,
yeah,
just talking to himself, just like, oh, come on, next set. And I'm just like looking at him and I just start training harder
yeah.
just if he's in the vicinity.
That's great. Like think
He's
about
like
that.
that. There's a girl who I think she was a CrossFitter and then she started doing strong woman. What's her name? Haley, I think. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't
I
know.
think she has a CrossFit gym in New Braunfels. She's another badass too. When she's in there, she makes me feel like a bitch. I'm
You're
like,
just
well, I
throwing
better
shit.
put another plate on there. I'm like, you know, because like you'll walk in some days you're not feeling great, and you're like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna take it a little bit easy, and like I'm doing whatever, walking with the yoke or something, and I'll put some weights on, and she'll be in there doing it too, and I look and she's got more weight
yeah.
than I
You're
have on
trying to.
mine, and I just feel like a bitch. Well, I better add another plate.
Yeah,
Yeah, so there's just people like that that just make you train harder.
that's important though.
Yeah, you well that you have to have those people around you.
And that's what I hate about like Gold's Gym and stuff. I don't.
I
I'm not saying
I
specifically
cannot
Gold's
go to a commercial gym.
commercial gym.
I'll talk shit. All of them. They all suck. Well, they're
Commercial
not
gym.
gyms. Here's the thing. I differentiate between a gym and a health center or a fitness center.
Yeah,
Those are two different things. A gym is where people go to get stronger.
yeah,
A fitness center is where you go to live a couple more years.
yeah,
I cannot go to those places. You are never going to see me working out at a Planet Fitness or a Gold's or any of those places. I
yeah.
just can't do it. When I walk in and the room is freezing cold and it's all just like bright colors in there, neon and orange, looks like a frozen yogurt shop.
Bright colors were like bright colors.
Yeah, I don't
No.
do that, man. It's just everybody's just like you look around, half the people are just busy wiping down equipment. They're afraid to get a little bit of sweat on the equipment. Like, yeah, when I walk into that, I'm like, nope,
Yeah.
I gotta leave. That's not my place. There's no chalk. Chalk is forbidden.
That's ridiculous.
It's funny. Like commercial gyms, chalk is forbidden, and then you go to a CrossFit gym and chalk is so overly abused. It's
Yeah.
not even funny.
People just throw it in the air.
Oh my god, it's just like clouds of chalk everywhere, just chalk dust all over. I'm like, bro, you're doing box jumps. Why do you need all that chalk?
Yeah.
what are you chalking up your hands for?
That's the thing that I think is funny because I said to somebody the other day, you will improve in the gym as soon as you start to understand that it doesn't matter what I look like in here. What matters, what I'm training for,
Sure.
is to look good outside of here. And so you have people who they're obviously like they're trying to stay as clean as possible, like with their clothing and stuff, like you're saying, like cleaning everything off. They're trying not to sweat. They're
That just
walking up to the gym and I mean to the mirror and like I don't know if it's like a generation thing. Like I don't want to sound like the old guy training right now, but there's nothing currently that gets under my skin more than seeing someone dance and film themselves.
Mm.
And I don't know what it is about that, but dude, I can't even look at it because I'm like, what are you doing here?
it bothers me too.
And
Yeah, those silly dance videos.
I don't care about
on
like a
social-
selfie or
yeah,
I don't care about
yeah.
anything like that. But like, I guess it's like the whole TikTok thing of like,
Sure,
why are you doing this right now?
because they're clowns.
And you know, I'm all for even somebody filming their lifts, like of course, like do all of that. But whenever you're there, like you're just putting on a show, like get the fuck out of here. You know, like I can't stand it. It's just there's no purpose. You're just
Sure.
killing time, and it becomes, you know, what would kill me in like the commercial gym when you are legitimately training for something is the people coming up to you and asking. I will talk to anyone anytime. I'm definitely not the guy where I'm like, hey, don't talk to me when I'm training. Like I will
Well,
talk
I
to
mean,
you.
but people should also have the sense if they see you gearing up for a max effort lift, they should come
Yeah.
back in 10 minutes.
But I'm like, I understand that it's like not normal to people, But if you're just coming up to talk just to talk,
Yeah, right.
I don't like
Yeah,
that.
right,
Like,
right.
especially the people who are like, "You will not believe what happened to me today." I'm like, "I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, don't tell me about your
Yeah.
day." If you want to talk about something specific where you'll have people come up and like, "Hey, my squat, I've got this going on." And I'm like, "Oh, like try this." It was a very specific thing, but you got people who treat it like a club.
Yeah, I like to have those discussions before or after the workout, not during the
Yeah,
workout.
I
We
know.
can talk about the lift before or after. You can give little tips during. If you're working up to a 1 rep max on a deadlift, let's say, and I'm watching your set at 85%, and I say, okay, drop your hips more
Yeah,
at 95%, but arch your back more, whatever.
yeah,
Just little tips like that until you hit that PR. But then workout discussions should be done before or after the
yeah,
workout, not during. Takes too
yeah.
much time.
You got people that like they get in this routine too, where it's almost like they have to check all the boxes to talk to everybody. And, it's like us. We've been in there. I kind of like just nod or whatever because I'm like so locked in,
Mhm, mhm.
you know, and there should be no offense to anything like that. Like, you shouldn't have to like politically go around and shake everyone's hand
Correct,
to be
correct.
like, "Good to see you. Good to
Yeah.
see you today." It's like everybody's here to train. If you see that, hey, we're both getting water at the same time, like, cool. Like, hey, how you doing? But when you get locked in on the social side to where you feel this need to check in with every single person in there. I'm like, God, don't.
It's not social hour.
Yeah.
Right. Now, so you mentioned you do a lot of accessory work.
Mhm.
That's something that Louis Simmons is very big on.
Yeah.
He always talked about like you go in, you warm up, you do your lift for that day, whatever it is, and then it's accessory work.
Yeah.
What are what were what exercises were you big on specifically for the deadlift? I
Oh,
mean, you could talk about bench press too, probably a lot of tricep extensions and shoulder
yeah.
work, but what were the areas that you really focused on for your deadlift? Was it hamstrings, glutes, lower
For
back?
deadlift, all of your posterior. So I would have an entire posterior day where I started from the ground up. I'll do calves, hamstrings, glutes. People do not work their glutes enough. Men think it's like a feminine thing, and I'm like, what? It's a muscle, you
If
know.
you have a weak ass,
Yeah.
you're in
It's like
trouble.
that's your lockout,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
glutes and then your lower back, all of your erectors, lat pull downs, traps, all the way up to even literally your neck. Like, a lot of people
Yes,
do not train their neck.
yes.
And I'm like, that's a dangerous thing. I'll joke around, my wife has a little neck. I'm like, hey, that's a risk for you in a car accident, and I'll like joke around that we
Yeah.
did
You
measurements.
probably don't want her to have a very big neck. That look kind of weird.
We did measurements. My forearm's bigger than her neck.
Oh
And
my
I was like,
god.
you got to get that thing
Yeah.
tightened up,
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
people will neglect an area and then be unsure why they're not strong in
for
that
sure.
lift. And it's like, when they say that a compound movement is a full body lift, it's a full body lift. And so if
Mhm.
there's a weak area, it will be noticeable. And I can watch someone's form. I can watch the speed of the movement. I can tell you where they're weak. And
Oh, for sure.
it's like it's obvious, but then they won't work on it. They'll only work on the full lift. And really think about that. This is the equivalent to someone coming to you and saying, I can't figure out why I keep getting tapped out, but I only train open mat. And you're like, what are you
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about?
yeah.
You're only going full speed 24/7. You're telling me you never break it down to the specifics of the movement. You never put yourself in a bad position. You only do open mat. And they're like, yeah, what's the deal?
Sure.
You're like, you're only doing the full thing,
That's a big problem. You need to break it down. You need to find out what your weaknesses are. Like with the deadlift, when you watch somebody deadlift, if they're having trouble getting the bar off the ground, they've got issues with leg drive.
Yeah.
If they're missing where the bar is right below the knee, where you're about to go over the knee, that's where the bar is furthest away from your center of gravity.
Yeah.
It's usually a lower back issue because that's the hardest part of the lift on the lower back. If you're missing the lockout, it's probably your glutes.
I see a lot of people too. They set up. I don't know whether they've watched someone set up or they just had someone teach them and they stood by it. But I will teach people if I was to tell you to stand here and jump as high as you can and as far out as you possibly can, how would you put your feet?
Mhm.
That is your deadlift stance. It's usually your most powerful position. And people feel awkward about that because a lot of times it's not the same for squat. It's
I was
like
gonna
that
say
for
the
deadlift.
opposite. I would say that's probably your best squat stance, but
Well,
not necessarily the best for deadlift because of the length of the torso and the length of the arms.
it's just
You might have different. You might have a better position to deadlift with a wider stance. Let's say if you have a really long torso,
right. Yeah.
maybe.
And you have to be able to see it to me, it's like, where are you explosive, right? Because people
Yes.
who have like really, really explosive hips, right? They will gravitate towards like doing sumo and things like that.
Mm,
And it just feels more natural for them to just pop their hips like that.
yeah.
But then somebody that's really,
Flexibility
really
too.
relying on their posterior strength, their back and things like that, like they're usually not great at like sumo, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's, there's some aspects there where you got to play around with it. But I feel like people, they're unsure about their most powerful stance.
Mm.
So just their foot spacing in general is usually a little bit off. And you see people like what's his name? Thor, you know, the big boy, the mountain,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
He does like a hybrid stance because he's so tall. You know, it's wide, really wide compared to most people, but it's still a conventional pull. Like he's still got his hands right there outside of his legs. And Shaw, same thing. Like it's a pretty wide stance, but it's
Shaw,
accommodating.
what's his Brian Shaw?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's accommodating his, like you said, his torso size, his leg size,
Yeah.
everything like that. But
Also,
it's
how big your stomach is.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true.
Yeah,
Especially with a belt.
if you've
You've
got
ever
a real
worn a
big
belt?
stomach, you probably need to get your knees out a little wider.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Like your deadlift, you have to be able to just lift that bar straight up and down without having to go around your knees. And your knees are going to track in the direction your toes are pointing. And so a lot of
Yes.
people, if they have that straight on stance, you'll see the bar have to go around their knees for them to lock out. And it's like, you're going to have to fix your stance because you want
You're
this
traveling longer
bar.
distance now.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You want this bar to just go straight up and down
Yeah.
for all those lifts.
Correct.
And, you know, that's a big thing. I see people, they change their setup every single time. That's a
Not
huge
good.
error. It's
Yeah.
like from warm up to max deadlift, every single thing should be the same for squat, bench, and deadlift. The way you approach the bar, the way you step, the breaths that you take, the way you grab the bar, all of it. So that
And one of my biggest pet peeves is seeing people unrack a bar and then getting into position to lift it. Like it just, did a little bit of personal training years ago, and I had a client just for the life of me, I could not get him to set up before unracking a bar on a squat, deadlift, bench, didn't matter. He just would go in there and take the bar out, start moving his feet around, get his feet, start, getting his lat. I'm like, dude, tuck your lats in before you pull the bar out. Like, do like plant your feet in the ground, figure out where you're going to be on the bench. And he would just never do that. And it'd drive me crazy.
yeah, it's
Just it's so annoying for me to see people lifting without setting up for the lift.
that's a nervous thing too. And so
I think it's just a brainless thing. Like
Yeah.
just how many times do I have to tell you set up before unracking the bar? And then they just don't. One of the things that I'm not even a power lifter, and this really pisses me off, the fact that we have monolifts and you have powerlifting meets that don't use them and people are still walking weights out. To me, it's just the most bizarre thing
It's
in the
because
world. Like,
what is
what
it?
the fuck are they doing?
What is it? Uh international, what is it, IPF? Like
Yeah.
you have to, right? You have to walk it out.
I don't know which ones, but I know some of them won't use monoliths. You have
Yeah.
to walk the weight out. And I'm thinking, why?
That's what I don't understand.
Why?
It's
Like, why are you
people,
still living in the past?
I heard somebody the other day talking about those. What's the tattoo called whenever you're hitting it?
Stick and poke.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, that's cool, but why would you get one? Because it's
Right.
essentially like you being like, hey, let me send you a telegram. You're like, just text me.
Right,
It's like you don't
right,
need
right.
to
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. It's a weird thing with powerlifting where some people don't want to keep up with the technology. They don't want to use squat suits. They don't want to use bench shirts. They frown upon all that.
That's weird.
And there's not a sport in the world where you're not seeking better and better technology and using the best stuff out there.
Yeah. And it's a pride thing, I feel like,
Is it?
They want the separation. They want the separation so they can be like, oh, wait,
Oh, we're raw.
Did you
We're
do it?
real.
Yeah.
We're natural.
Are you raw? Or are you real?
Right,
Yeah,
right,
I'm like,
right.
what are you talking about?
oh, if you benched that weight with a bench shirt, you didn't really bench that weight. Listen,
Yeah.
whatever Dave Hoff benches, like 1,050, whatever the hell he benches, I don't care how he benches it, whether he's wearing a shirt or not.
Think about
That's,
your hands.
oh my God.
I don't have perspective on how that feels.
A 1,000-pound bench press.
No.
I mean, I think he's the only one ever. I think AJ Roberts was getting close, but then he stopped because he was going to have a heart attack. I think Louis Simmons was going to kill him because he was already getting so big to hit whatever lifts he hit. And he's telling a story. He came off he was competing and he came off a lift and like he needed oxygen. He could barely breathe. And he had done some massive lifts at a world record. And then Louis looks at him and he goes, if you gain 30 more pounds, you can set another record. And he's like, fuck you.
Yeah,
I'm going to die if I gain 30 more pounds. I'm going to have a heart attack.
Really think of the pressure. Think of the pressure on your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I've seen.
Well, that's why a lot of powerlifters walk off the platform and they need oxygen.
Oh, for sure. I've seen, I think only twice, over 1,000-pound squat twice in a squat suit. And I don't think people understand because when you unrack that in a squat suit, just like you said, they're set up and everything like that. There is zero assistance there. There's nothing helping you hold that weight on your neck and your back. There's no way for you to comprehend it, but except for just to do that, those isometric holds where you unrack weight, go ahead. Anybody should try it. Go as heavy as you possibly can. Put the rack right here underneath the bar and just see how high you can go.
Just stand up with it. Yeah.
Just see how high you can go with how much weight. A normal bar will hold 765, I think, like all the way to the very end. Like, so those are like power bars that are meant to hold that. And they'll usually use kilograms, and things like that. But I don't think most people could even get.
You can't even imagine it. I mean, I've got Dave Hoff's Instagram pulled up here.
Your hands, I can't
imagine. He's squatted 1273, benched 1047, deadlifted 826.
That's incredible, honestly.
And this is where you really get to see the thing about biomechanics we're talking about. Like, here's a guy who can deadlift or who can bench 200 pounds, 221 pounds more than he could deadlift, which is unusual. You're supposed to be able to deadlift more than you bench, but because how short his arms are, and how thick his torso is, it's hard for him to get all the way down to grab the bar, pick it up off the floor. But he can bench press like a motherfucker.
You got to think though too, like equipped lifting, in the bench and in the squat, you're relying on some of a rebound, from here to here. And then on the very bottom end of the squat, that's all those suits are helping you do. The difference in the deadlift, that's a deadlift suit. It's actually very, very difficult to bend down to grab that bar. And so it's kind of like, it's a weird thing compared to the start of the squat and the bench, because now you have to really, really exert a lot of energy to get it up off the ground. And that your grip fails usually faster than anything. Most men, I say all the time, you're designed to deadlift and your back is usually strong enough to do much more than you could imagine, but your grip's not there. And so
yes,
that's where you fail first,
Yeah, there's a little video right here of Dave Hoff about the deadlift, something crazy. I don't know how much is on this bar. Probably,
I don't know.
Probably 900 pounds.
You see people breaking records all the time. I'm like, when's this going to stop?
Yeah, like for him, like when's he going to actually hit his peak? I mean, I don't know. He's still going.
You see it. You see crazy stuff all the time.
You just deadlift 860 like a monster.
Eddie Hall and them, Half Thor and them doing those 1,000 deadlifts. I mean,
that's much.
That's so much.
That's a scary human. Anybody that could deadlift 1,000 pounds, that's a scary person.
Really think about that. And then he switched to boxing.
Who did?
That Half Thor boxed
really?
Eddie Hall. Yeah.
Oh, really?
They both trained for it and boxed each other.
I didn't know about this. How'd that go?
I don't even know. I didn't even watch it.
Jesus, just the clash of the Titans.
I saw where Eddie Hall tore his bicep though when he was training for it. So
probably threw a wide hook. That happens a lot. You throw a wide hook and then it just rips. That's a common way to tear biceps in boxing. That's why you really got to make sure you turn it in.
I always thought, so you see a ton of injuries every single powerlifting meet, but that was the most common during my time. The underhand grip on the deadlift,
Tearing
tearing their
biceps.
bicep.
Yeah.
I was for sure like, if I get an injury, it'll be that injury. And we never thought it had been my quads or anything like that.
Yeah. So you blew out both your quads?
Both of them. Yeah.
Squatting.
Yeah. At the Arnold Classic 2017. Yeah. So it's my second squat attempt. I had opened up with like 650 or 660, and then I jumped to 705. I planned to squat 750. And my second attempt, I mean, I unrack it and it slipped just slightly on the left side. And you only get one re-rack. So I was going to save it, of course. And so I was going to squat down without adjusting, and it tore on the outside of my quad. And when I fell, both quads tore off the kneecaps. Both of them.
Patella tendon?
Yep. Yeah, it was bad.
Wait, no, that would be the quadricep tendon, probably. Yeah.
So it attaches
That's
to
a
the
very
patella
common one.
bone, and it was bad. And with your knees wrapped, it just immediately,
Yeah.
pushed them up even further. They retract.
Oh my
So
God.
nothing for them to hang on to. And so that's why you have to go into the trauma center, because the longer you wait, the further they retract. So the incision has to be
You've got to go pull them back down right
quads.
away.
Yeah.
So emergency surgery, like you went straight to the OR.
Yeah. I went to Columbus, Ohio, and
That's probably a good place to go.
Yeah.
I'm sure they deal with a lot of athletic injuries there.
Yeah, they dealt with all the Ohio State players and everything like that. And all the surgeons were coming in. They wanted to see it. They'd never seen a bilateral quad rupture. There was actually another person that had ruptured one, and there was a Russian guy that broke his ankle. This was all just the squat flight, and we were just there from squat, 3 of us.
Jeez.
And everybody wanted to see bilateral. They'd never seen 2 quad ruptures. So they were all just coming in like,
they were
wow.
coming in to look at you. Oh, look at this guy.
What was crazy, the way they were spinning it off was they were like, this is better for you. And I was like, what? And they were like, if you would have ruptured one, they said, forever, you would have accommodated that leg. And so it would have been very challenging for you to bring them up together. They were like, because you did both, they were like, it's going to be a better recovery.
I understand the theory behind that, but I don't know about that.
Might have just been saying that.
So what was the recovery like?
So I didn't take a lot of time off, because I think mentally it was the worst thing for me.
Of course.
I was so used to being very strong. I was so used to being like, that being my thing, especially anything that you like associate your identity with.
Yes.
It's a very dangerous thing for you.
Yes.
And so I was definitely that guy. And I was in Columbus in that hospital for maybe 3 or 4 days. And we traveled back to Georgia. I took the weekend off, and then I went back to the gym in a wheelchair. I took 8 total days off from training. And I was just beat down mentally. Sitting in the bed, I was kind of like losing it, because I was so used to having that outlet, not just physically, but for stress relief and things like that. And so I needed to get back in, but I didn't anticipate like the whole commercial gym thing, like we talked through, the people coming up and talking to you, and just the light switch of people being like, hey, you're the strongest person I've ever met, to saying, hey, are you okay? Can I get anything for you? Like treating you like you're a little kid.
Yeah.
That was like
That's hard
to me. And I remember saying to my wife, I was like, this is like the thing that I look forward to every day. And now it's become the thing that's like my worst nightmare. I have nowhere to go to do this,
And did you do max effort lifting after that injury?
I worked up to it by 2019, right? So I actually went in. I've got tons of videos to where, maybe within 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I benched 450 with my leg braces on, stuff like that.
What about squat or deadlift though?
I've not squat maxed. Deadlift though, I did the 750.
That was after you blew out your quads.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So I immediately jumped into bodybuilding prep, because I've always wanted to compete. And everybody that, my friend group, they were like, you just need to do bodybuilding. Forget about powerlifting. Because for 2 weeks or maybe 3, I was dead set on, I'm going to come back and powerlift. And the doctors were like, hey, this was not, because I asked them, is this due to the weight? And they said, well, the weight didn't help.
Don't ask doctors.
Yeah. But they were like,
unless the doctor's a power lifter, the fuck does he know?
Well, they said it's the immediate loss of tension.
Yeah.
And so
doctors.
I was dead set.
Doctors, the first thing they're going to tell you is to stop working out.
Well, they didn't. And, they were more of the athletic side, I guess, with the Ohio State athletes. But they were like, no, they were like, we've seen this happen from people, doing anything. And I've met people now. I met a guy who was squatting under a garage door that was halfway open and ruptured one quad. I met a guy that was walking off of a roof and his knee, how your knee will give out. He did that, ruptured his quad and fell off and broke the other leg.
Jesus.
And I was like, God, at least I have a cool story. I was dead set on powerlifting until, eventually people were like, well, if you want to get back into that, just use this as a time to just get your muscle, your muscle strength back and just take your time and just bodybuild when you can. And so that was March of 2017. And I competed in bodybuilding in June of 2018 and won that show. And so I didn't take much time away. And then
you didn't have
May
much
of 19 was that deadlift.
That's fantastic. So you didn't have much muscle atrophy from that injury?
I had a ton. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't even walk. I was in a wheelchair. I trained in a wheelchair for 5 months.
But you got back, you competed in bodybuilding fairly soon after that injury. So you must have been able to pump those muscles back up pretty quickly.
I just had to work around it basically and do what I could, and it was such a mental grind.
Sure. Well, that's why I asked if you had done max effort lifting after that injury, because I would imagine, like you see those guys break their shins in MMA, like Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman, and you wonder, will you ever kick with full confidence again?
Right.
And so you see a power lifter rupture a quadricep tendon or something, whatever it is, break a knee, something, whatever. And then you wonder, like, are they ever going to feel totally confident getting under a heavy bar again?
Right.
And that takes a special person. That takes a seriously mentally strong person, just mentally strong like a motherfucker. Like guys who break their backs and then go back and get under a 900-pound barbell. That's a crazy motherfucker.
That's the thing that I always said about powerlifting is like, I mean, the group that's really successful, they are a little bit crazy.
For sure.
It's like, it's not something that's desirable for someone that's just content, right? Like to do something so miserable hard on the body like that. And really that break that Anderson Silva had, I had the exact same break in college as a junior. That's how I ended college football. I broke it all the way and had that rod put in my shin before I ever even started powerlifting. And so, with the way I think about injuries, it's kind of like, well, that's going to happen if you're really pushing yourself. Right. And you have to be prepared for that, if you're signing up for something like that, because if you ever heard like someone being like, well, they're playing scared, right? Like kind of like what we were talking about of like two people coming out and they're not intentional. They're kind of like toying with each other. It's like, well, what are you here to do? That's the worst thing you could do. There's actually, to me, more of a risk for injury when you're approaching something like that, because you're so conscious of the fact of like, oh, don't do this. And you're not being yourself. You're like walking on eggshells. It's like, I was always the type of person who's like, well, it's going to happen, but I'm going to do everything I can, while I can. And then you just focus on the recovery if something happens.
Isn't that where the accessory work comes in?
Yeah.
For injury prevention more than anything?
Yeah. Especially stability. Because most of the injuries that you'll see, it's due to an associated muscle. Like, one of the worst injuries I saw was somebody tear their adductor.
Oh,
and so in a big squat. And so when they folded, their leg,
are nasty.
Kicked out. Their leg kicked out to the left and like a split. And, went all the way down. And that was a bad one. And it's usually like an associated muscle like that, that's not accommodating to that lift when you're going down.
Those are nasty.
Triceps too. I was always a very narrow bencher, and people, they sleep on the triceps. It's like, that's a big, big part of the bench,
Yeah, which is crazy. That you're supposed to probably train your triceps more than anything for the bench.
Yeah.
The bench is upper back, lats, shoulders, and triceps.
See, no one thinks of their back. And I will watch somebody.
That's what lowers the bar. Your lats are what lower the bar.
It should look and feel like a lat pull down.
Yes.
And people, you watch younger guys lift and they're coming down so fast, out of control, hitting a different spot on their chest every time.
Or
And
bouncing the bar off their chest. Yeah.
I'm like, the more control you have on the way down, that very slow eccentric part, that's the part that's so important. If you can focus on that, like you'll be able to hit it just right.
If they're doing max effort weight, they can't come down that fast. They won't be able to reverse the bar.
No, that's the problem. Everything that you're doing in training, it's going to cross right over into that's why I say, even with 135, you don't just walk up and half-ass sit down on the bench.
Yes.
It should be exactly the same as if this is about to be 500 pounds.
Yes.
And I still to this day, it's a weird, like, I guess it's like, something where you're superstitious. I will not walk under the bar to squat before I squat. I have to approach it with a little bit of respect, right? Like I'm going to come in from the backside as if this weight could fall and crush me, like it could. Same thing with a bench. I'm not going to just like jump in there. Like you'll see people like swing in or just like half-ass lay down. Same thing with a deadlift. I will step the same. I'll grab the bar the same. I'll do everything exactly the same.
I support that. I think that's smart.
Yeah, it has to be that way. That because, like you said, I mean, most people fail mentally first, right when they touch it. As soon as you unrack it, they're like, "Oh fuck, it's too heavy. I'll never get this." Before they even start.
Yeah, that's a lack of preparation. I think more than anything, that's just a lack of preparation. You should be exposed to those weights. It might be different when you're hitting a PR and you're it's the later part of the contest and you just did your second attempt and you're going for the third. It might feel a little different. I don't know, but I feel like that's a lack of prep.
Yeah, it just removes that part.
There's something missing in your training, probably.
How you start second guessing yourself. You're like, you know what you should do, and so you're like, okay, I got to put my foot here. It's like that should be out of your mind. That's automatic. I step here, I squat.
Do you think there's a lot of do you think a lot of knee injuries from squatting specifically could be avoided if people used gear? Because you can sit back further if you're wearing a squat suit and your knees don't go forward as much. So your patella tendon and quadricep tendon are not under as much pressure.
I mean, you have to think like,
right. Cause like when you watch a person squat without a suit, their knees are going to go forward a little bit more. Your knees are probably going to be halfway above your foot, like halfway where your foot is. It's going to be about a halfway point, maybe even over your toes a little bit, or above your toes. Not like you don't want to go too far forward if you're squatting, if you're doing a max effort squat. But when you watch somebody squat with a suit, they can really sit back far and keep their shins perpendicular to the ground. And that alleviates a lot of the pressure off the knee.
I think, it goes with like the accessory stuff, right? Like you'll see a lot of people that they become very dependent on the gear that they use and they don't train anything but that. I think.
Is there a problem with that though? If you're competing in a squat suit, why not do all your training in a squat suit? Well, don't you want to, doesn't that relate to what you said about always unracking the bar the same way? Wouldn't you always train that same way?
You will for certain amounts of weight. Right. Like here's a good example. Whenever I train deadlift, and this is really unconventional, I guess, now that I think about it, because there's a lot of people that'll say, don't use straps because you can't use them in the competition. Right.
I agree with that.
Well, I used straps all the way. Like, I mean, until I got towards the end, because the main goal is to compete. And if I did something, and this is just my mentality, right? This is not scientific. This is not something that someone told me to do. I was like, well, if I don't make it to the powerlifting meet, like it's all for nothing.
Why would you not make it to the powerlifting meet though, if you're not using straps?
Tear a bicep doing 540, or something weird.
Yeah.
Because the mentality is different in the gym. That I'm a big believer in the fact that it's like, and I'm speaking about a commercial gym. That's where I had to train. I had to train there.
Is it not a concern for you though, that your grip might not hold up at the meet?
Well, I would train my grip all the way up to 500 pounds.
Okay.
So I wouldn't use any straps at all. And I was the type of person where, after that, I would go into kind of like, well, my goal here is to work the movement. And, I understood like, well, I'm not where I should be in terms of like rest and recovery. And there's a significantly higher risk to me getting injured in the gym actually than in the meet.
Mm.
And that's what happens to people over and over again. And it's because we're talking and I'm like, okay, let me get this. And then I'll come back and talk to you. It's like, it's not a good simulation for what you will actually have to do in the meet. And you're a different person in that meet. Like everything is different. You've done everything for that day leading up to it.
I feel with the straps though, if you're going for reps, and sometimes I like doing high repetitions with the deadlift, and you feel like your grip might fail at rep 16 and you're trying to hit 20,
Yeah.
then use the straps to get those extra few reps. But when you're doing max effort work, I think you ought to expose your grip to those lifts.
Like you saw, that's something I started to learn with that plan. None of it was like one rep, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's where I was like, if I'm training with this bicep constantly every week like this
Yeah.
for 3 and then now 6 and then now 8 to 10, it's getting annihilated, this one bicep, you
Yeah.
know? And so that was a big part where I was like, all of my warm-ups I will do without the straps. And then everything during that actual block of like working sets was, what is the word? Oh, is it speed? Is it reps? Is it heavy? And then I would focus and be intentional on like what I was supposed to do, what I was supposed to gain from that working set. And I wouldn't worry with the like, because people, a lot of people would be like, well, Matthias, aren't you worried that your bicep won't be acclimated to the heavyweight? And I'd be like, what do you mean? And they'd be like, well, what if you get in the meet and you tear it? I was like, that risk is always there. But I would say that working it with 500 pounds is doing all the acclimation I need, per se, if we're just talking about maybe straining those muscle fibers and then repairing it and strengthening it. It's like, what more do I need? Like, if that won't do it, I don't know what I can do to do it. I wouldn't want to put it at risk of like putting 800 pounds on there and holding it, right? Like, that's not the goal. I'm not trying to devastate this area. I want it to make it. I want it to be there. I want it to be healthy and I want it to be strong. And I want to get there so where I can perform. And that never, I didn't ever have a deadlift injury. I was like be considered like a deadlift specialist, you know, and I didn't use any straps or anything like that. I deadlifted in 2020. I deadlifted 500 pounds 21 times straight. That's like I think that's one of my favorite deadlifts.
That's a lot.
And like I worked that because no gyms were open. And, you know, the gym that I was going to was one of my buddies' home gyms.
10,000 pounds of volume.
Think about that. And I said, he only had 500 pounds. And I was like, I'm going to work the shit out of this 500 pounds. Jeez. And first time I ever tried it, I did it 13 times.
He only had 500 pounds. What a pussy.
I was about to throw up the first time 13 times. I was like, God, I'm about to throw up. That was hard. I was like, I wonder how many times I could do this. And we started like talking about it.
Yeah.
Next time it was 15. And then I remember I jumped to 19 and I could not get over 19 reps, probably for 3 attempts. And then I did it 21 times. And then I think later on in 2020, I tried to beat that to go more than 21 times. I got to 20 and the little 2.5 broke in half when it went down.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, what do I do? Do I keep going?
Just keep it going.
And I stopped because I was like, well, it wouldn't be 500 pounds. You know, I still have,
damn it.
That's my coaster on my desk.
Plate broke?
It's a broken 2.5. And I wrote down 500 times.
Was it made out of glass? What kind of plates are you using?
Too rough on it.
I guess so.
That was my favorite lift though. That's a good one.
That is a good one. How's your training now that you're leaning more into jiu-jitsu? Like what are some of the main things that you've changed in your workouts?
I try to I'm trying to build muscle, but I want it to be functional. And I'm trying to
I don't think you need to worry about building muscle. You got plenty muscle.
I just love to build muscle. And you know, I'm trying to balance the recovery with jiu-jitsu because you know, I want to do jiu-jitsu maybe 3 to 4 times per week. That's what I try to do. I try to only do open mat once per week right now because I'm just in the phase where I'm trying to build up my defense and everything. But you know, my gym time.
Are you doing more battle rope and assault bikes and
no? I mean
things like that?
Some good advice that I got early on from someone was, Matthias, like if you really get to the point where you understand jiu-jitsu, they were like, you won't have to have crazy cardio, because that was like my big concern. I was like, how much cardio do I need to do to be prepared for this? And they were like, the people who are really good are really calm and
Yes.
really relaxed.
Yes.
And he was like,
pressure is what gets you tired.
Yeah.
If you can be in moderate cardiovascular shape, and if you're rolling with a bunch of beginners, you could roll all day and all night and you will not get tired.
Yeah.
You won't get winded, because it's the pressure and it's being in trouble that gets you tired. That's where you start holding your breath. That's where you start overexerting yourself.
Yeah.
So if your levels above your competition, cardio is of little effect. Now, if you're on par with your competition, that's where the physical attributes will start to play a bigger role. Strength, cardio.
See,
all
that's
of it.
cool to hear you say, because I mean, I hear a lot of people discredit like the strength part,
Yeah,
you know?
they're bullshitting themselves.
Yeah. And it's like, I understand where they're coming from, because they're being like, hey, don't rely on that. I completely understand that. But
Rely on whatever gets you the win.
yeah.
Period. Did you see the second fight with Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir, where Brock just held him down and just beat his face into just beat his face into meat. Just held him down in that half guard with that scoot, like he had his head folded in and just kept cracking him with those little short punches.
It's weird he didn't get out of that, because like
he couldn't. He had a bear on top of him. Right? Yeah, but at a certain point, strength neutralizes technique. Strength is the one great equalizer. So at a certain point, I grappled with a guy back in El Paso, man. This guy had been training for about 6 months. Now, if a person doesn't have any technique at all, you're eventually going to win. I've trained with some pretty big guys, former collegiate football players, and even and a former NFL player one time. And if they don't have any technique, you can hold your own.
Yeah.
But once they get to a decent level of understanding the movement on the mat, you're just fucked. Because like this dude was just a monster, like 280 pounds, 6'4", with a 6-pack, and he just held me down. He put his hand on my torso and he just held me down, and I just couldn't move.
Yeah.
It was like he's so strong, I just couldn't move.
Everybody that I talk to like tells me that. And I appreciate that. I want to be to that point. I'm trying to get to that point. I mean, there's just so much. There's so much.
Yeah. The point that people are trying to make when they tell you not to rely on strength is, if you're always just being the bigger, stronger guy, then you're not really learning. Yeah. I understand that. And that's true. And so sometimes when you're rolling with smaller people, you have to intentionally use less strength so you could try to work your technique and actually work your way out of certain positions, instead of just like curling out of an armbar.
Right. That's what my coach now, something he said that was cool was like, you need to always imagine like you're going against yourself or somebody even bigger. Imagine that you're going against someone much stronger, and then it will limit those, like, I'm going to just go for this because it's there and force it. Like,
yeah. Especially with guys that are 200 plus, 250, because there's not a lot of guys in jiu-jitsu who are 250 pounds. Yeah. So you're probably always going to be the bigger guy. Yeah. Even for me, there's a good amount of people. I'd say maybe like half the people that I roll with are about my weight, and then half are much smaller. Yeah. So I do have to remind myself with the smaller guys. But here's another thing that little guys don't. They tell you not to use strength, but they fail to acknowledge. And it's like they need to understand this. I tell them, listen, if you don't want me to use full strength, you cannot use full speed.
Yeah.
You cannot be going at that speed, because if I try to keep up with you, I'm going to be completely worn out. So my counter to your speed is the size and strength. Yeah. I have to hold you down.
Exactly.
So I'll use less strength if you slow down a little bit, and then we can work technique together. That's fine.
Even the experience level. It's like, if you know something that I don't know and you're allowed to use that, like, why wouldn't I just be able to hold you down?
Yeah,
It's like, there's something that you have that I don't have.
Yeah.
That's life,
Sure.
And that's been really difficult for me, but I understand it. I'm just trying to.
It's your skills and attributes versus my skills and attributes.
That's
right. Just what it is.
That's right. And I like that.
And every now and then I got to remind people, well, look, if this was real life, you'd be dead. You and dead people don't complain. So just shut the fuck up.
That's true. That's very true. Though. Yeah. Like that. And, that's something I had to learn. Even in powerlifting is that, I was consumed eventually with like the weight cut. And I remember the last time I went to a world championship in Las Vegas, and I didn't take into account the time change. And I had gone like 30 some hours without drinking or eating. And I'm just trying to get through the weight cut. At that time, I was trying to make it to 220. And I weighed in and I was 0.2 over. And they were like, well, take your time, walk somewhere, come back, do whatever you need. We're going to be here for a few more hours. And I look up on my phone, there's like a CVS and it just said a mile away, but it was just a straight mile. It feels like flying in a plane. And I decide to walk it, and it's like 120 some degrees. I get there, I buy everything. I bought like Pedialytes and stuff, whatever, left it all on the counter because I was so out of it, walked all the way back.
Oh, geez.
And I'm standing at a red light across from the hotel, and it in Vegas, it had like just rained, but it was hot again. And I'm spitting the whole time, trying to get as much out of me as I can. I spit into this puddle, and this car drives by and splashes it right on me.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, I'm done with this shit. You know, I go and get in line, 0.2 under, all to bench press 450, you know, and it was just bench is all I had qualified for. And it's like, I could have done more. And what's the purpose? And it's the same thing with anything else. It's like, what are you doing? Like, it's like what we were talking about earlier. You should be trying to push it in every aspect. Like, if you feel like strength is a weird thing for you, you should try to get stronger.
Get stronger,
like
bitch.
Yeah.
It's
like, try to make yourself more well.
Gym's open, bro.
Yeah.
Go to Strength Built.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I totally agree. Man, how good is a Gatorade after a weight cut? After you just weighed in and you're completely depleted?
It's all I think about.
Oh my God. I'll never forget the feeling. Dude, I want to cut weights. I want to put myself through a hard weight cut someday just for the euphoria of having a Gatorade after. Like, I had my second fight was at 160, and I cut down to 160. And I mean, I was just skin and bones. I was just as dry as the Sahara.
How much did you have to cut?
At the time, I was probably walking around 172, but like my 172 back then was probably 7% body fat. Yeah. Like I was just skinny already. So to get down to 160 was brutal. And I actually cut to 158.
Oh,
and so, cause I get to, it was a crappy little MMA show, and I get there and I'm like, where's the scale? I want to check my weight. Oh, it won't be ready until, you know, they're calibrating it, whatever. It won't be ready until the weigh-ins. So I sat there for like 3 hours. I could have had 2 pounds. I could have had 2 bottles of water.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and plus they give you a pound. So really I overcut by 3 pounds. Like that's huge. So I weigh in, and then I remember I had a Gatorade and a banana. Oh my God. I felt like I could run 100 miles. It was insane. Like the energy was unbelievable. This was in Alamogordo. The fight was in Alamogordo, and I was living in El Paso at the time. And it was 2 of my friends and I. They drove me to the weigh-ins. We drove back same night. Yeah. Figured there's no point spending the night there. It's a little over an hour drive. Yeah. So the whole way back, the whole drive back, I did not shut the fuck up for 1 second. I was talking the whole way back. Yes. I get home, I sit on the couch and complete crash. I mean, I could not lift. I could not get up off the couch for like 2 hours. I just sat there, complete sugar crash. I don't know what it was, but I went from super depleted to incredibly energetic to crashing again. That was such a roller coaster. But my God, after those weigh-ins, that first hit of glucose you get, woo!
That's what I always, whenever I was doing a weight cut like that, I don't know why I say the same thing. I'm like, I just wish I had a swimming pool full of Gatorade. That's like, it's always the same thing. I say the same thing. I love that blue Gatorade. Like whenever I'm so dead like that.
You know when I knew it was bad? First of all, never go grocery shopping when you're really hungry or when you're cutting weight, because you're going to buy so much stuff that you normally wouldn't eat. But I knew it was getting real bad. The weight cut was getting real bad because I actually wanted Cinnabon, and I can't stand cinnamon.
Yeah, you start to.
I don't eat anything with cinnamon. Like those cinnamon glazed donuts or whatever the hell they are, like the Cinnabon. I won't. Rolls. Yeah, I can't go anywhere near it. If I ever order a dessert at a restaurant, I always double check, make sure there's no cinnamon in it. Oh, like I don't like cinnamon at all. I actually craved one of those. Yeah. I was at some grocery store and I could smell it. I could smell that Cinnabon thing. Yeah. And just the smell of the sugar, I actually wanted one. It was so depleted. And that's when I'm like, damn, I must be starving.
You know what's weird?
Because I've never craved one of those in my life.
Is that usually it will direct you towards something that you're deficient in, right? And
correct. Yeah.
You know, I would have coaches for bodybuilding like that would try to tell me that, because usually it's like, if you start to crave something savory,
You probably
like
need it.
it's like something with your sodium and stuff,
Mm.
like it's fats, right? And they'd be like, add a half avocado. And I'm like, I don't fucking need a half avocado. I need a cheeseburger. That's like what I'm telling you. And then
Eat
you'd eat
10
that,
avocados.
avocado, or they give you like some almonds, and you're like,
You feel
I feel
better.
fine.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
wow, your body is such a weird thing. And I tell people that all the time when people are like trying to cut weight, like lose weight. Like, especially you'll hear someone that they don't go to the gym a lot, and they'll be like, I don't know why this isn't working for me. I stopped eating as much. I only eat like 1,500 calories a day. And I'm like, your body is designed to try to save you. And so
If
it
you're
doesn't know
starving,
the
yeah.
difference in you being stranded in the desert and you just skipping meals.
Right.
And so it makes that switch to start storing fat. Like
Yeah,
you're doing the opposite.
you start producing a hormone, if I remember correctly, it's called leptin, that makes you retain all the as much calories as possible,
Yeah.
because your body thinks that you're going into starvation.
Yeah.
So it actually starts trying to burn less fuel
Yeah. There's
because
a
of that. So
fine
there's
line there with fasting.
yes,
People do it with fasting. They'll go too far, or they'll do too much intense fat. You don't want to do like intense fasted cardio. You just do just like steady, because you're wanting to trick your body. That's like what you're trying to do, because if you do it right, like it can just be steady and you can burn fat every
Sure.
single morning. But when you start to push it too hard and your body starts to think like, oh, he's running from something, or like he's stranded somewhere, let's store fat because he might have to do this for a year. And now you're doing the opposite. And so your stress level plays so much of a role in like your nutrition and everything like that.
For sure.
People don't realize it. They go immediately to high stress. Like, that's it. I'm not eating anything anymore. And you're like, you can't do that. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think bodybuilders eat so much and then get lean? How could that happen?
Yeah, they're trying to overcompensate for bad habits, for a lack
Yeah.
of discipline. So you want to be undisciplined for years, and then you want to go on the carnivore diet in 2 months and lose all the weight that and reshape yourself in 2 months.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't work.
Anything fast like that, it's not going to stay.
Nope. No, it does not. So let's wrap this up, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. This was fun.
I
love
appreciate
talking
it.
about working out and fighting and all that stuff. So this was very cool.
This has been great. I really appreciate you having me. And
yeah,
I mean, you've been good to me in the short amount of time I know you. You're a great guy and really
thanks,
accommodating, like, being willing to share everything and welcoming in the jiu-jitsu world. Like that's really cool. Like I'll remember you in the jiu-jitsu world,
thanks,
just like
man.
the people I'm talking about for powerlifting and bodybuilding.
Well, you make it easy because you're a nice guy. When you're on the mat, it's like you said, you approach it in from the angle of I haven't been doing this for very long. Help me learn, and so yeah, it's easy to be nice to nice people.
Yeah, sweet.
So, all right, man. Awesome. We're tuning out later, everybody.